I'd like to call to order the Middlesex County Board of Supervisors, May 7, 2024 meeting. And with that, could I have a roll call, please, Ms. Hammond?
Mr. Williams,
Present.
Mr. Bill Harris,
Present.
Mr. Crittenden,
Present.
Mr. Jesse,
Present.
Mr. Don Harris.
Present. And Mr. Williams, would you lead us in a prayer, please?
Okay. Let us close our eyes and just meditate for a second and put our minds on something and understanding that excellent is a standard here in Middlesex County. Gracious God, our Father, once again, God, we come to this place. Father, we come here each month calling on your holy name for directions, Father, leading us, helping to grow stronger as a community. Father, helping us to strengthen ourselves, that, Father, in your way, that we're better, 2 is better than 1, and 10 is better than 2. Father, we thank you for all you do for us. Father, we do understand that everything we got and do come from you. Father, we pray that the things that we do this afternoon, the decisions we have to make, Father, once again, Father, we want to be a blessing, Father, a blessing to you, Father, that we are doing in our hearts and our souls. And Father, let us know that excellent is a standard. In Jesus' name, we all do pray. Amen.
Ms. Hammond, would you lead us in the pledge, please? Flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome the public. It's nice to see everybody's smiling face today. Thank you very much for being here. I'd like to move right into the approval of the consent agenda, and a motion would be in order for that, please.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the consent agenda be adopted.
I have one thing that maybe we talked about the minutes from last meeting.
Mr. Chairman, can we have a second and then make that discussion since he made the first, if you don't mind?
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now, there you go.
Okay, the motion we're going to have a discussion right after that. Motion is made by Mr. Crittenden for approval of the consent agenda and second by Mr. Jesse. Discussion.
I think it's just a typo, but we discussed that.
Turn your mic on. Turn the mic on.
In the package on page 12. Give everybody time to get there. It states Supervisor Bill Harris asked for a breakdown of the expected connection fees, I guess it was. And the respondent would be $12,000 to connect to the sewer. And Matt, you and I exchanged a little bit of conversation there, and I think you said that no, it was 10,000. So I'm kind of like, it got printed back in here at 12.
Yeah. We need probably
to
go
get
look
that
at.
corrected in the minutes here.
Yeah, we need to go back and look at the video and listen to the tape. I thought it was 10,000 too.
You acknowledged that it was 10,000, but I mean, that was,
Yeah.
but now I see it printed as something different once again. So I always like to get,
Yeah, we can go back and check that.
okay. thank you.
Absolutely, especially what was said. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good catch. That's what we need to do for the minutes sometimes, make sure we catch things like that, because sometimes there are typos. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Walker, you'll follow through that, and if we need to make a correction at the June meeting, we would do that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please, for the motion.
Mr. Bill Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Crittenden,
Yes.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris.
Yes, motion is carried to accept the approval of the consent agenda. All righty. Again, welcome the public here, and we will now move into public comment section.
With that, Mr. Chairman, would you like me to go over the rules for that?
I would, please. Thank you.
Yes. So each speaker would give his or her name and address for the record, and you're given one opportunity to speak. All your comments should be addressed to the Board of the Supervisors, not the audience. And each individual has 3 minutes to speak unless you represent 4 or more individuals, and then you have 12 minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Anyone would like to come forward and speak, please?
Okay, thank you. Deborah Miller, 36 Wild Goose Drive, Hardyville, Virginia. I'd like to address something to the board. I've been attending your meetings for about 5 years, and in March of 2021, Ms. Riccardi was hired as the Assistant County Administrator. With her MBA, financial credentials, and experience working in financial roles in municipalities much larger than Middlesex, she was an excellent choice, and we have all witnessed her leadership and should respect her advice. Early in her position, she recommended that the county update the payroll system and outdated financial software. A year later, the replacement financial software was included in the CIP for the first time with a projected date of 2023. The latest CIP has that upgraded and moved to 2026. I'm going to read just a little bit from that. The county's financial system software is over 30 years old. The county's current accounting software system doesn't provide the information needed for government operations. A new system would be intuitive, would provide report writing, data tracking, and would automate routing processes and provide meaningful data insight. It would reduce errors and redundancy in data entry. Every month, it appears that the supervisors are required to make financial decisions, including long-term, multi-million-dollar financial commitments without a full picture of the county's finances, either on individual projects or the budget as a whole. Supervisors should have access to easily generated reports to determine the advisability of each and every fund request that is included in the agenda. You need to start this process now. A business with a $36 million budget, which is what you are, should not only have annual upgrades, but you should be replacing your financial software at least every 10 years. Middlesex should not be using software from the late 80s or early 90s. As an example of the negative impact of using old software, on today's agenda, 3 items related to the sheriff's office are included and in the following order: financing, addendum, and construction contract. The sheriff office financing with Davenport, acting as a financial advisor, expired by contract in 2016. And yet there's no action until June as regarding the financing for the sheriff's office. An addendum adding an additional $950,000 to the sheriff's office costs, raising the cost from the published cost of $3.3 million to $4.2 million, includes the possibility of drawing funds from the fund balance to cover this. And finally, a request for the approval of a construction contract for the new sheriff's office without having the financing in place or the addendum approved. In a business environment that I work in, financing would always be in place before a multi-million-dollar contract was executed. I'd like to hear questions asked about potential financing sources, including terms, interest rates, collateral. Will the financing be for $4.2 million or $3.3 million? What is the amount that has already been committed on this project? Can the board members easily access the financial information required to make decisions that demonstrate sound fiscal responsibility? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Anyone else like to speak? None heard. I'm going to close the public comment. Constitutional officers, item number 3. Ms. Wright, would you come forward, please?
Chairman, I'll give a little introduction for Tracy, our treasurer. Tracy was, featured in the newspaper as winning an award and getting her certification as a master treasurer. And
Thank
we
you.
we celebrated that with her when she passed the exam a couple of months ago. But we invited her up here today since she's being portrayed in the paper in a wonderful picture, and she's got some good news to tell the board about the amount of money that we have currently financed. I'll let you take it from here, Tracy.
All right. Just want to let you guys know, it's a little over 14 million that I have invested. If you want to break down, I can give it to you, but I have 3 or 4 different places that I have everything split up between. So, and this month's interest was just over 40,000. So it's doing pretty good. And it hasn't been done in a long time.
Great. Any questions for our treasurer?
Yep.
Thank you.
I would like to also echo that, and we wanted you to come forward so we could publicly again
Thank you. I appreciate it.
recognize you for your accomplishments, for the recognition that you got for the certification, for what your department does and for what you do, and we sincerely appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
You're very welcome. Thank y'all.
Tracy, don't go nowhere yet.
Yes, sir.
You know, when I saw you, your picture in the paper and everything, and this is what I thought of you. I said, hey, we talk about study, to show yourself approved. And hey, and that's what you are doing. And I'm proud of you. Okay, and that's an example of what can be done in all departments. I don't care what it is study to show yourself approved. And a lot of people have heard of that statement. And I just say it and repeat it again. You're doing a fine job.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm glad excellent is the standard.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No,
Okay.
thank you, Ms.
All
Wright.
right, guys. Thank you.
I'm going to defer a little bit, chairman's options on the agenda for just a moment. I'd like Kevin Gentry to come to the podium, please.
I didn't know I was coming, so I didn't have time to get nervous about it.
That's why we surprised you on it. In recognizing Ms. Wright, there are several other people that on occasion, you just don't see them. Things happen, things get done, and you fall into that category that a lot of times your face is not visible for the county, but you do a tremendous job, Kevin. We really couldn't operate without, and from time to time, and I've seen you in action where something's not working either from a Zoom call or from in here or whatever, and you do a wonderful job in taking care of that for us. It's just one of those positions that you don't get the recognition that you need. And I wanted to make sure you got the recognition today. Thank you very much for what you do for our county, and we do appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
All right. Lastly, those are the faces of Middlesex County that you don't always see. You, of course, see all of us, and we're corralled, at the supermarket and wherever else people can find us. But there are a lot of people that make this county productive, and Matt's staff does a wonderful job in doing that. Thank you, sir, very much for that. The last person I would like to just say something about, and I'm going to make her come to the podium as well, is Ms. Hammond.
She's already nervous.
I'd like to also recognize you for the fact that you actually, to me, is the face of Middlesex County. I have not come up to upstairs without asking you anything and everything that I might need that you've been able to provide for me. And I know you're a right hand for some other people that are sitting here as well. And your smile when I come up there, I never see, you must not ever have a bad day because you, and I know that's not true, but you always have a great smile on your face
Thank you.
and ask what you can do. And I know you do that for everybody else in the departments as well. And just wanted to recognize you today and thank you very much for what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, constitutional officers, Commissioner of Revenue, that's a report only that you can find if you haven't already looked at it on page 74. And now we're going to move into item 4, agency and staff reports. Mr. Walker, would you like to start?
Well, VDOT's report only, I believe, is in your packet. We did get a packet of information from one of our subdivisions in the Hartfield district. Read through that information and I forwarded that on to VDOT. And I believe Bill and I talked about it, and some of the roads in that subdivision were in pretty interesting shape. So they probably need a little bit of attention. As the board may remember from our last discussions with VDOT, they have a very limited secondary road maintenance fund. And that's one of the reasons why you see the primary roads paved sometimes 2 times and resurfaced 2 times before a secondary road gets some attention. We've been saying for years that VDOT needs to reassess how they allocate the different monies, but their methodology makes some sense because they look at vehicle trips per day and traffic volumes and speeds when determining how they're going to allocate those maintenance funds. Not taking too deep a dive on this, but if the board has any issues with any of the roads in their district, always call the 1-800 number because that logs you into the central network where you have a work order and a claim, but also you bring it up here at the board meeting and we'll make sure we get it to VDOT2 in that channel. That's the old way of doing things. And sometimes that works pretty good too. Yep.
You have forwarded, this message.
I have.
Thank you
Yes,
very
sir.
much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. After I discussed it with you and got your okay, I went ahead and forwarded it on to VDOT. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Yep.
And the VDOT report, which shows the roads of what's been completed and what's on the target list, would be listed on pages 75 to 77. Social services is a report only, that's 78 and 79. Moving along, item number 5, regular agenda items. And first on the hot seat is Davenport and Company. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Walker, please.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to introduce the board to RT Taylor. This is not the infamous Ted Cole. This is Ted's partner, RT. Ted and RT have been the county's financial advisors for, I want to say, close to 30 years. I may be underselling that. I know they've been with the county as long as I've been around, even as planning director. You don't see them that often because we don't borrow this much money that often. And RT is going to kind of brief the board on some of our battle plan on how we're going to achieve some financing for the sheriff's office. And I'm very happy to hear Debbie's conversations at the public comment because I think some of her concerns are going to get relieved from some of this address. We've had a couple of conference calls with RT, and I think we've got some decent news. I would go so far as to say good news. Of course, there's nothing written in stone and with market conditions being what they are until we sign on the dotted line, but I'll turn it over to RT with Davenport. Thank you for being here, RT.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here. Thank y'all for the opportunity to continue serving you all in an advisory capacity. We certainly appreciate the relationship over the years. And I've put, I think it's in your packet, but we just handed out the hard copy version in case that's more helpful to make
Actually,
notes.
RT, I don't know if this is in their
Oh, it
packet.
may not be?
They had a cover memo in their packet, but we wanted
Gotcha.
to make sure we got the latest and greatest in there.
Good deal.
I'm presuming.
Okay. So as Matt mentioned, the county is considering funding the renovations and improvements to the Polar Vocational Center for use as the county sheriff's office. And I'm starting on printed page 1. So it's right behind the cover. The page numbers are in the bottom right-hand corner of each page. So the county engaged Bay Design Group to serve as the architect on the project, and you all received construction bids from 5 general contractors in late March. Those bids, depending on the scenarios and the options that may be selected, those bids ranged from 3.3 million up to 4.8 million. Right now, based on our conversations with county staff, the county anticipates borrowing up to $4.5 million, inclusive of financing cost. The county does have, based on our discussions with staff, you do have some reserves that you all would likely spend down on the, call it, pre-construction cost. So you're not looking to necessarily borrow and then reimburse your reserves. You're going to use some of your, call it, cash in your hip pocket toward the project. And then we're going to outline some potential funding sources on the next page and then further focus in on the 2 that we're pursuing right now. So if you would turn with me to page 2. And this type of, call it, governmental project lends itself to being funded through various sources. The 4 major sources right now that we're looking at are direct bank loan, the Commonwealth of Virginia's state pool bond program, called Virginia Resources Authority, which just sold bonds in the public markets within the past, call it, several days. And we'll have an upcoming summer pool that should price in mid to late July and close, and funds would be available to the county in early August. A public sale, the county could go out on its own through the public markets and get rated by the credit rating agencies, go issue bonds in the public markets. That does take some lead time. And also you would take the full onus of the related financing costs, rating agency costs, et cetera, versus the VRA pool, which you are sharing in some of those costs with other pool participants across the state. And then USDA, they obviously are a potential funding source, but the county is pretty far down the path with respect to this project, and they're typically required to lend out over 30 to 40 years, depending on the program. So in the case of VRA or the banks, we're looking at 15 to 20 plus years for the amortization or payback period. We have a little bit more flexibility there, as well as the timing with our bids in hand. Being this far along in the path of the project process, the direct bank loan versus VRA funding options would be what we're going to propose dual tracking. Okay. So if we turn the page to page 3, first and foremost, we have prepared with the help of county staff. We've helped them prepare a VRA application package to help VRA underwrite the county through their credit underwriting process over the next several weeks, leading up to, like I mentioned earlier, their potential summer pool bond sale in mid to late July. There is no obligation just because we submitted that application over the past several days. That doesn't mean the county has to necessarily commit to going with VRA. We'll get to that in a minute. At the same time, we've sent out a bank RFP to financing institutions locally, regionally, and nationally, so that on a date and time certain, which we'll talk about in a minute, we would get those bids back from the banks and know what our interest rate would be if we chose to go with a direct bank loan approach with a specific lender. Okay. Now, what we're going to get to in a minute is how do we know which way we're going to go? Number 3 on page 3, what we are going to do for your June 4th meeting is come back to you with bank bids in hand, as well as a current market estimate of what your rate could be through the summer pool with VRA. And we're going to compare the results, the preliminary results. We'll have firm bids in hand from the banks, And then by virtue of our underwriting desk, which trades bonds day in and day out, we'll be able to get a real beat on how VRA might look at the time we present to y'all on June 4th. Okay, so that way you can say, okay, well, the banks, if that's the lowest cost provider, we could move forward and close with them. Or if VRA by virtue of going through the bond markets could actually save you some basis points on your interest rate, maybe it's worth waiting 30 days to go forth and stand by for the VRA issuance. Okay, so we'll have to be able to give you some perspective on that at your June 4th meeting. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, well, turn to page 4 with me if you would, and I'll just go down the potential schedule here. So we sent out, as part of this dual track approach, we sent out the bank RFP back on April 22nd to sort of get going on the process. Again, there's no commitment once you put that RFP out on the street to say, yes, we got to do a bank deal. So we're doing that sort of preliminarily as to give us enough time to meet all the deadlines for potential action at your June 4th meeting. So we've submitted the VRA application that was due on May 1st. We had a little flexibility on the due date. Anyway, VRA was very comfortable. They knew we were going to be submitting the application, and we got that in a couple of days ago. May 16th, so just a couple of weeks from now, we'll get those bank bids back. We'll start analyzing them, clarifying the proposals with the banks. There's always nuances in every proposal that need to be clarified. Maybe even a little preliminary negotiation if a couple bids come in very tight to each other, figuring out where somebody is willing to give a little bit to get the county the best terms and conditions possible. And then by June 4th, we'll be able to take those bank bids and its summary analysis and compare it to what your potential loan could look like through the Virginia Resources Authority Summer Pool Program, stack those up side by side and see which one is the most cost-effective financing option. And then at that time, you all would make a selection to say, we want to go this route or this route. Okay. I will throw in a little nuance here. If we go VRA, the county can enter into a local bond agreement directly with VRA. If we find out that the bank options are the preferred financing approach, we would involve your economic development authority, as we've done in the past, to issue bonds through them as the county's conduit issuer, and then pledge the collateral, which is what we're renovating. And the EDA would also have to take action by virtue of them being your conduit issuer. So they'd have to approve the financing as well. Okay. So let's look between the two blue dotted lines on page 4 real quickly. So June 14th, shortly, let's call it 10 days after the VRA, after your board meeting, the VRA folks would like to know if you're in or out of the pool. So again, we'll have good information for you at the June 4th meeting. We'll be able to make that call and be ahead of their deadline to let them know if we're going to participate or not participate in their summer pool program. And then we will float a little bit with the market between June 14th and July 24th. Again, we'll provide you some sensitivities around that versus what the banks provided when we come back on June 4th. And then by early August, that's when VRA anticipates closing on their bond issuance, and your funds for the county would be deposited in your account with the Virginia State Non-Arbitrage Program, which is currently yielding above 5%. So as you draw down those monies for construction and they're sitting there, you'll be able to earn up to, call it 5% or so, to, let's say, either add to cover your construction cost, or maybe use those interest earnings to shave some of that debt service. Okay. Now, if we decide to go with the banks, that EDA meeting that we believe we'd hit after your June 4th county board meeting would be June 20th. That's where they would take action based on y'all's direction and approval process. And then we could close shortly thereafter, let's say, after the EDA takes their action, and your funds could be in hand for the project, call it early July, mid-July. Okay. Any questions?
Yes, I have one.
Yes, sir.
The July 24th date,
Yes, sir.
it says, interest rate lock, that can't occur until that date. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So your interest rate through the VRA process would be known the date they sell their bonds out in the public markets. At that point, everything's locked in.
Okay, well, I was looking at the June 14th to the June 24th.
Mhm.
You'll know, or we'll have some estimate of what the interest rate could be by the 14th, correct?
Yes, sir. On June 4th. That's when we're going to have the proposals we get from the banks, those interest rates. Many of the banks will say, we can hold this rate firm until you close, which may be 30 to 45 days from now. Okay. Some banks move around a little bit. That's why we have to get the bank bids. You don't know what you're going to get until the day of. But at some point, they will have fixed rates from the banks provided to us ahead of your June 4th meeting.
Good, you answered that. Great, wonderful. Because there is some time flexibility that the interest rates could change from the 14th to the 24th, but if we can get some sort of solid agreement that they would hold that for 30 days, that'll solve that problem, correct?
Yes, sir. And as part of our summary analysis that we'll share with you, when we compare call it held firm bank rates versus VRA's then current market rate, we'll show some sensitivities, what it takes. If the market goes up by certain basis points, what does it have to do to break even to make it the same or better or worse than the bank options? So we'll give you some of that perspective when we get things lined up after we get bids back and come to you on the June 4th meeting.
Wonderful.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
Have we looked at any kind of a combination of financing? Other than just like we're going just one entity here? Let's say if we decided to do some small portion of secured funds that we have to do a secured note on part of it.
Well, both would be secured by the collateral of the Puller Center.
Of the Puller Center.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's say that we wanted, with cash, we wanted to secure $500,000 as a secured loan with cash. That could change our interest rate, correct? And our
I'm not
balance,
following your question. You're using
Okay.
cash to
All right.
secure the
I
loan
have
versus the
$500,000 in the
collateral?
bank. I have $500,000 in the bank.
Yes, sir.
I want to borrow $500,000. So I'm going to put up that $500,000 I have in the bank. So you're getting a secured loan now. So I should get a better interest rate because I am securing that note with cash, not with property, with cash. And I just use that as looking at different avenues, maybe splitting it up versus doing it all with one entity.
So the first thing that occurs to me, if you're going to try to make it two different tranches, you're going to double up on your financing costs, meaning you've got two separate transactions that both need to be documented by bond counsel. So you're going to essentially double your financing cost at the outset. Okay. Now, as far as being in the municipal world, I don't think there's much benefit with call it a negative pledge on cash or any kind of collateral pledge on cash versus using the property, right? And a lot of times, what you might run into, and bond counsel would have to opine on this, but we've run into it before. Let's say you take that $500,000 or even $1 million. I'm going to use $1 million in this example so that I can do the math real quickly in my head. But right now, you've got $1 million sitting in your hip pocket in reserves. Okay, and that's earning, call it 5%, right?
Okay.
So $1 million and 5% would be $50,000 a year, right?
Correct.
If for some reason you pledge that cash, it may be tied to the financing, just guilty by association for lack of putting it, because it's tied as a pledge to that loan.
Right.
It may be limited in the tax exempt bond world. It may be limited to what we call the arbitrage yield rate. So if you're financing, let's say you lock in a rate of 4.25%, right?
Right.
Instead of being able to earn 5%, you'd only be able to earn 4.25%. So you're losing 75 basis points on top of doubling your financing cost by having two tranches.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I asked you.
Yes, sir.
You've looked at our finances over before you came with these and stuff. You see anything that we could possibly be doing better that would help us pay for the sheriff's office? We just had someone speak about a new financing system that ours is 30 years old. Anything that you've seen that maybe we should look at doing to?
I think it'd be fair to say that we would have to do a deeper dive into the county's finances to provide really call it come back and present recommendations. But I think for purposes of today, we're just focused on this. I don't have any guidance on the rest of the finances. I think Matt and Anne Marie do a great job. If we can be helpful at some point in the future, happy to sit down and talk about it. But I think that's, we're not at that level right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
In RT, you may know this already, but we're still on the Bright system.
Yes.
We've
Okay.
got away from the dot matrix printer, but the Bright system's still with us.
Yeah, we
So
were talking about that the other day. I remember still doing stuff
What
off the
system-
green bar paper.
In your travels, what systems do you see the counties are using? Because we're a little bit blurry here, it seems like, about the changeover, but anytime you do a software change, there are other things that come along with it.
Yeah, I wouldn't know them by name. All I know is the output that they give us to analyze.
Okay.
We have to be agnostic as it relates to, the different systems. You got to be able to roll with whatever data you can get from various clients. And I feel like everything looks a little bit different. So if it's downloadable in Excel, that's all I care about,
Okay.
as opposed to having to go through green bar dot matrix paper.
let me ask you a safer question that won't get you in any proprietary trouble. Y'all handle a lot of counties around the Commonwealth. Do you know a county that has went through the conversion away from Bright that has been smooth and or smoother than others that we should maybe consult with and chat with about our financial system?
I know of a couple, and I'm happy to talk with you offline.
Okay.
Which ones are actually still going through it.
Right.
I don't know if I could gauge which one's easier than
Right.
the other.
Or
But
smoother.
happy to put you into. I think if somebody's got like current
Right.
ongoing experience and they're getting toward the end of their process, that might be the best one to hook you up with to have that conversation.
But some of the trepidation has been kind of talked about today. We shared over several months and over years, really. We just can't seem to find a county that has made that conversion away from Bright that it hasn't been a nightmare. And that's been a little troubling to some of our team, but including the treasurer and the commissioner and
Mhm.
of course our financial staff. But we're always willing to try to find somebody and see if they've had a better experience than most.
If I can lay out just one major point.
Yep.
One takeaway that I've got from, let's say, interacting with folks in the government world that go through system conversions is run your system parallel. Do not flip the switch day one and the old one goes away. Run it parallel until you're absolutely comfortable, because once you turn that old system off and the next day goes and you start making transactions of some sort or journal entries, they're not going to tick and tie and you're not going to be able to reconcile anything. And I think that if I could give one piece of advice, that would be the one we hear the most, is that daggone it. We should have paralleled it for, 90 days,
Yeah.
as an example.
I call that the training wheels recommendation. We've heard that before.
Well,
Keep the training wheels on for a while until you make sure you're comfortable and then steady and then take them
that's
off.
right.
and
Well,
then
hate to
you'll
be
fine.
duplicative, but obviously it's important enough to iterate.
Right. So it's too early to talk about some of the initial rate projections we talked about on the conference call with the board. I mean, it's not official.
Yeah, I think it's still a little too early for that.
Okay.
I'd hate to stake ourselves out on something that, things could change.
Well, we don't want to jeopardize the bid from the banks, but
Yeah,
I was really happy to hear the rate that we talked about the other week on our conference call. They're not going to get locked in until June because market conditions could fluctuate, but I'm not displeased. I'll leave it at that.
and anything can happen in the macroeconomic global environment that would upset the apple
Yeah.
cart. So we want to make sure, I'd just rather come with you with some firmer data in hand on June 4th.
Mr. Taylor, the June 4th, if I'm reading this right, that's going to be the date. We're going to have to make a decision pretty much that day.
Correct. Yes, sir.
And I have some extension to some of that discussion in the next endeavor with the contract. I think we're good to float with some of the money we already have in the budget under this year's capital improvement plan and fund balance if we need to make it to August or to the July term, depending on whichever choice the board makes. think we're in good shape.
And I will say that's the point at which we need to make a selection between bank versus VRA so things can get going in the right direction. I would just add that you don't have to finalize the borrowing amount until let's say a couple weeks or so after the June 4th meeting. If it's banks, we'll have to know a little bit sooner. VRA is a little bit more flexible because they need to know a week or two out from when they price. And when they price is July 24th. So before they send that offering document out to the potential bidders in the public markets, they like to have that number known. So we've got, for decision points, June 4th is which way we're going. For the exact amount we want to borrow, we've got a little bit more flexibility. And that's pretty typical in this type of process. It's not, figuring out the details. How do we want to fund this? What do we want to maybe afford with cash, or maybe we want to reimburse? What's the final borrowing amount? That's pretty standard in this process. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Matt, on the contract that we have, how good is the price? I mean, how long before we have to do something?
I think we have 60 days to approve the contract with the contractor. We have a pre-construction conference meeting that Ben Burton is scheduling, hopefully next Wednesday on May 15th, to get some of the initial guidance from the contractor and initial draw schedule. But I think we have 60 days to approve the bid. Ben, you're with us online. Can you chime in on that from the bid? How long we have to approve the bid amount? I mean, we've already issued the notice to award, but how long did we have to enter into a contract with a proposer? And you're muted, Ben. Yep, Ben. Yeah, yeah. We'll grab the file.
And you were saying something a few minutes ago about putting money aside or whatever at 5% and using money. Could you explain that a little bit better?
Yes, sir. So right now, the county's fund balance is sitting in some type of account, right? And I don't know if it's LGIP, Tracy can help me out, but you're earning like almost close to 5.5% really right now, 5.4 to 5.5%. It's been bouncing around. The LGIP is a state run by the Commonwealth of Virginia fund where your operating funds can be invested on a regular basis. And they're depending on the portfolio. I'm assuming it's a short-term portfolio, not the long-term portfolio probably. The short-term portfolio is yielding roughly 5.4, 5.5%. And that's where your dollar in, you're guaranteed to get your dollar out plus interest earnings. They have another portfolio that's called their extended maturity folder. That one has to be marked to market based on net asset value each day. But the point is the fund balance you currently have, forget about borrowing money for a minute. The cash you're sitting on is being invested right now at 5 to 5.5%. If you spend that any kind of amount down, $1 million in our earlier example, you would lose $50,000. That enhances your budget versus borrowing at, call it 4 or 4.25% in the current market. So you're losing that, call it that arbitrage between them. Okay. And all I was saying in my example earlier is that if you borrowed based on a pledge of that cash versus collateral, the asset we're renovating, you might lose basis points because tax law might say we've got to limit these funds at the arbitrage yield. You're basically your borrowing yield that you're going to borrow at. We might have to limit that because those monies, your reserves, are pledged toward that loan. Versus if you just pledge the building and the renovations around it, you're not tying up cash unnecessarily.
So if they're saying $50,000, we don't have to borrow and we don't have to finance it for 30 years, then that's a savings too, right? Other words, if we need $4 million and we decide, say, look, we're gonna pay 1 million, that leaves 3. So if we do the math on if we pay $1 million, how is that gonna save over a period of time? Are you saying that's not a good thing to do?
It depends. And right now in the current environment, $1 million earns 5.5%. Okay. If you borrow $1 million, you have to pay 4.25. It's simple math. Which better, right? Keeping more interest earnings. If I can keep 100 basis points, which is a whole percentage point or better in my bank account and keep earning and compounding that interest, and I'm only paying 4.25%, that's better math to keep my money in the bank, right? Now, it might make sense for certain costs on the front end of construction to go ahead and front load that, which is what the county's doing.
But I see what you're saying. You're saying if you got a guaranteed rate of 5% that you guarantee to get for 30 years, then it'd be cheaper. But I'm a simple guy. I like to see the math on it because I always say, the less you borrow, the less you will have to pay. But what you were saying is that if we invest, then we take investment away from interest and it all come out based on a length of time. So let me say if you pay cash for it, then you just turn around and start all over again. So the institutions in it to make money, and it don't seems like nothing there that I'm really proud about, to be honest with you. But that's you answered part of my question, but at the end of the day, I just want to see, not based on guess of 5%, because we could move that money at some time or another, maybe get 7, then we invest in the money that we already have, plus paying interest on a loan that we have, because a lot of times it seems to me that we say we'll do something because we take long term and we make a payment. Okay.
Mhm.
And I would say 50% of the people does it today. Is if I can make a payment, I'm not looking at over a period of time that what it's actually costs. So and once we get the date to lock in the price, which is very important, we got to lock the price that we're going to pay. Because if we can't lock the price in with what they say that the cost of whatever they got goes up, then all of a sudden, because we're waiting on a loan, we done lost everything we had. So if we were to start, we still could borrow the same amount of money if we move the starting date a little bit more, get the loan, and we can lock in our price, because once we find out that the guy can't guarantee that this is the price we're gonna pay for it, then everything shuffles the deck.
Yeah, I
And if
don't
we
know.
pass 60 days on the date that we got here, so it already been some days, what have been 30 already?
And Reggie, we got an answer for you. Ben's microphone on his computer is not working for some reason. Ben, are you unmuted now? Did you get your mic fixed? You're not showing up as muted anymore. In any event, it's 90 days.
Okay.
That's my reading.
And
That's my reading. of the
Kevin's
bid.
got him on the phone. We can put him on the near a mic.
There he is.
Okay, Ben, can you turn the volume down and I'll put you on speakerphone on the phone, okay? Right, hang on. Good, you can turn that down. Right, hang on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
You gotta turn your speaker down.
Turn your Zoom speakers down.
Yeah, that's gonna feedback like crazy.
90 days.
We got that in writing, I guess.
Yes, sir.
contract.
Yes.
Okay.
90 days.
From the date of the award,
Which that date.
Put them on again.
I think. the
No,
date
it's
after-
90 days after the bid opening, and the bids were opened. The
What was
bids, were-
noticed before?
no, sir, it's
Not-
subject to 90 days after the bid opening.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Yep.
And the bids were opened on March 22nd, 2024.
Right.
At 2 p.m.
So that's April, May, June.
Get the
So,
mic fixed.
So roughly
so we
June
got to wait till
22nd.
July before we get a financing. We can't lock something in before that date. I'm talking about on the finance side now. Because you don't know what the contractor is gonna say. We got the best price. Everybody said the cost is going up on everything, so you take 90 days, is a mighty long time. But if you say we're locked in, if y'all saying we're locked in, that's all we got to go by.
I would say that we're locked in. So we did, and I'm sorry that Ben can't add more here.
Yeah,
So we did a unit price, this isn't a lump sum. This is based on unit pricing. So we are locked in the sense that he can't say the nails now cost, I'm making this up. He can't say the nails now cost $50 when they only cost $10 today. We're locked in for 90 days on the bid pricing that was submitted.
Okay.
If that answers that question, I hope so.
So I get questions later.
What's that?
I'm saying I got you. I know where you're coming in.
Well,
No, that's
and I
fine.
think
Because that don't
too,
even include y'all fee too. We gotta add that on it too, right?
well, that'll be baked into the analysis. It's not just us, it's your bond counsel, your bond attorney, VRA's got cost, et cetera. That'll all
Percentage
be,
is that?
I'm sorry?
What percentage that normally run?
We're still working with county staff to get all the details of all the financing costs solidified.
Okay. You won't buy me. Trying to get finished paying everybody. You ain't
And
got enough.
just to follow up on your project overview, the county anticipates financing up to 4.5 inclusive of financing costs. And that is also inclusive, I assume, of page 82 of some of the things that weren't bid in the contract.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah, if you're ready to move on to the contract discussion, we can. We can ask RT to hang close if you want to go back and ask him more questions.
Okay,
Oh, you all right.
let's move along. I assume that you're talking about the addendum.
And if I may, before we do, I'm going to chime in and have Anne Marie cover this just real quick before we move into the contract, because I think I heard some of the questions going on over there, Reggie. We're working with Davenport because we're still operating under a very old agreement with them. It's a cooperative agreement. The last one we had with them, with Picosin, I believe it was. And Anne Marie's prepared to discuss that. That's going to get finalized in June. That's why I don't think RT can answer you straight on the percentages, because part of that revised agreement is updating that because it's been so long. Anne Marie, are you still with us? And hopefully your mic's working?
Of course, I'm still with you.
There we go.
However,
That's county IT right there, guys. That's why he was recognized at the podium. His mic works. No offense, Ben.
but the discussion of the contract with Davenport and Company, I'm really not prepared to discuss it. It is an agenda item to let you know that we are working on it. We have been, as you can see, working under a contract that the county entered into in about 2012 based on a bid by Picosin back in 2009. So that contract expired. However, as Matt indicated, we work with our financial advisors so infrequently that every time it came up, we simply did a one-shot type purchase order, work order, as opposed to a contract. Well, this time, last year, I think it was last year, we talked with them and they said we could piggyback the newest bid, which was by, bear with me, I'm going to say Dinwiddie. And instead of piggybacking Dinwiddie, we are going through other cooperative purchasing agreements. That's why I didn't want to put it on today's agenda. I am reviewing, obviously, you know, I've been a little bit out of sorts, but we are reviewing, I think there's going to be 2 or 3 cooperative agreements that I can review to make sure that we get the one that's got the best. I mean, they've all got great terms, but that has the best terms for us. Perhaps it lasts the longest. So that is where we are with our Davenport and Company contract. And I'll bring it forth next week or next month.
Any other questions for Ms. Riccardi? All right. Mr. Walker, what else we need?
Okay, well, contract discussions, you authorized staff to issue a notice of award to our low bidder. And that has been done. We've had some very, I think, fruitful discussions, Heather and I, with the contractor. The contract we think is in very good shape. Heather will speak to the contractor, and then I will get in at the end of this discussion and talk a little bit about some of the all-in costs that were not mentioned, except in passing in the budget present or budget work sessions and some very limited discussion at the last meeting. We had a meeting of the stakeholders committee and we ironed out all of the total all-in costs for the project that have been discussed throughout the project, but were not included in the bid price. And I'll talk a little bit about that after Heather does her legal with the contract.
Ms. Lewis?
Mine's rather straight and to the point. There is a cover memo that Matt and I put together. It's on page 82 of your packet. And in short, this is a contract that was included, the majority of this was included in the bid documents. Ben Burton, our consultant engineer, worked on it. He had some excellent points, which I incorporated. And this is the same contract we used for the Cook's Corner renovation when we did the HVAC and the floor system. So at this time, I'm happy with the contract as prepared. The contractors agreed and already signed. Sounds like they're very eager to start work. So if the board wishes to move forward, the contract is ready for your authorization. Okay, and then there is a cover memo that might be helpful too. I'm kind of already stating, but it gives you the all-in costs.
And I'll take, if I can get my mic on, I will take, we're not having mic troubles here, I forbid it. I'll take that as a segue into the all-in cost. The board will recall during our budget work sessions and some of our discussions about the sheriff's office project, Kevin Gentry was saying, yes, that's the bid price and you're getting that estimate, but that's not the all-in cost. You have the IT cost that we feel like we're going to get a better deal and better product of buying that direct and incorporating that into the project. That's kind of been the game plan all along with the stakeholders. I think Sheriff Bushy's very comfortable with that. Everyone has a great deal of respect and reliance upon Kevin and his judgment. And Kevin and our guys, coupled with the contractors, probably going to come together and deploy and implement a lot of that infrastructure and hopefully save the county quite a little bit of money. Not incorporating that into the bid, because obviously if you incorporate it into the bid, the contractor is going to want to cover some of the unknowns and probably tack on a percentage on top of that. So the IT costs are coming in at about $500,000. That's our estimate. Could be lower, could be slightly higher, but $500,000 as we've discussed before. Emergency services for the outfitting of the Emergency Operations Center at 125. There was an initial estimate of, I think, 150. We met, the stakeholders committee met, and we discussed that. And there's a little bit of overlap between David Lehman's needs and the IT, Kevin's capabilities. So that number was dropped by about $25,000 as an estimate. And then the sheriff wants to buy some lockers and some other accoutrements. Estimate on that's $25,000. As RT said, the financing costs are to be determined. Part of that is to be determined based on the amount of money we borrow, too, I believe.
The VRA cost is an element of fixed.
Right.
To cover that spread across the full group.
Yeah.
There's an element that's fixed cost, and meaning for VRA, it's their bond counsel they have a agreement with their bond counsel that it's going to be a set amount, basically.
Right.
Part of it.
Right.
And then there's another part that's sort of variable. And then they also have to fund what they call their capital reserve fund, or CRF. It effectively has to cover the highest point of their debt service. So they allocate that across the pool participants as well.
Right.
We have to figure out in our discussions how y'all want to structure it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how your contract is with Sands Anderson as your bond counsel. So
Right.
can't speak to that specifically.
Right.
That when we're getting together the cost of issuance budget, we ask them, what's your placeholder going to be? So we can get that, and then we fine tune it as we're getting closer and closer to getting those final numbers.
So kind of segueing back to Reggie, your point, once the board makes some decisions on which financing vehicle they want to use, some of those costs are going to come into focus.
That's right. I think it's fair to say we have a good conservative placeholder in place right now to run numbers on. And by the time we get to the final numbers, we should be under whatever we've provided conservatively thus far in the report. So whatever we run for you and bring back to you on June 4th should have conservative financing costs, et cetera, in it. And then when you get the final numbers, they should be lower. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay.
And then that brings us down to the last item, and that's contingency. Contingency was
Wait a minute.
not included. I'm sorry, Bill, go ahead.
Insurance to be determined.
Cost of issuance.
Issuance.
Did I spell it wrong?
I'm sorry, okay.
It could be my spelling. North
No,
Carolina,
it's okay.
buddy.
I should have had my glasses on. Like, look at, we can determine. Okay, I'm good. Okay.
Yeah. Hopefully I didn't have insurance in there. But the contingency was not included in the bid. And when the stakeholders met, we had a variety of opinions. Ultimately, the sheriff and I should say, ultimately, kind of went with Ben's recommendation of roughly 10%, 10% contingency. Now, whether we finance that or not is still very much in question. In fact, the last couple of sentences on your memo get into that point. The sheriff and I spoke about it. I think both of us tend to agree. We kind of think we ought to not finance contingency and borrow that money, that we ought to have a heightened level of review for change orders, for instance, and have them maybe come through the sheriff, of course, and then to us. And then if they need to be paid out, and if the board agrees, we'll appropriate the necessary money. We have enough wiggle room, of course, in our fund balance to do a supplemental appropriation. And we have $300,000 left in this year's capital budget for the project. Now, I'll get back to that in a second. So we got about a month to decide whether you want to finance contingency money or not. We just thought it would be a heightened level of scrutiny on change orders, if that makes sense. And I can say that publicly because we want the contractor to know we're going to be watching that. But the $300,000 was not included in that bid. And all of us know there are going to be things that happen. And you probably need a little contingency and you want some scrutiny on that. So that's kind of where that stands now. And going back to the 300,000 roughly that we have in this year's capital budget for the project, that's what gave us a great deal of confidence. I spoke about it at the stakeholders committee meeting. I asked Ben, what do you think the first couple of draws are going to be? The first one in particular, where you're largely dealing with mobilization costs, the contractor getting set, coming in, doing the work. $20,000 to $50,000 is a reasonable range. Probably be more like 20, is what we talked about in the stakeholders committee. So May, June, July, I think we're going to have plenty of funds there in this year's capital budget that can be rolled over into this to cover us until August if the board chooses to go with VRA, or of course earlier if we choose to go a private bank route. And we've notified Davenport that we want all of the local banks invited to bid. We want all the local banks to feel like, they got a chance at our business, and, we want to encourage them to bid on the project and of course give us the best rate and the best term, right? So that's kind of our discussion points. We did issue a notice of award. We do have tentatively planned a pre-construction conference with the contractor to work out some of the logistics of mobilization. All we need from the board is authorization to approve the contract. And if y'all are comfortable with doing that today, we'd like for you to authorize either the chairman or myself to sign the contract and get going on the project. And I'm confident we're going to have a very good financing options for the board. And always, I will say this, and I may regret it, may come back to haunt me. If you got horrible rates and you got enough money to manage it or finance it through your fund balance, but there's plenty of fund balance there for the project. So that being said, I will answer any questions, and of course, RT's here as well. I'm not recommending we finance that through fund balance, so let me add that.
I've heard a lot about borrowing the money. Let's talk about that other side of the equation. What kind of plans, what kind of strategies do you have for us to be paying this back?
Well, it depends on the options the board chooses and of course the rates and terms, but we have a fairly healthy fund balance and we are still getting organic real estate tax growth. So we're hopeful. I hope it's not a plan, but based on recent results, we think the tax collections are going to come in pretty solid. And if we have a $200,000-$300,000 bump in debt service, I don't think that's going to be hard to overcome. I'm worried about a lot of things in next year's budget, Bill. Financing of the sheriff's office is not one of them yet. It's just something that we had already kind of planned that we were going to be doing anyway. And as that debt service comes on, you may recall from the budget work sessions, we have that dip happening in 26, 27 anyway. I'm worried about how the state's going to get along next year with any amendments they come up with, a lot more than how we're going to finance the sheriff's office.
It's like 27, 28. You're about $1.5 million is coming off.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're in a very good debt position. So
I would like to see something of those options you talked about, and you can put question marks behind it because they're
Right.
not in writing. I would like to see them jot it down for all of us to have a copy of.
Absolutely.
Kind of what you're talking about it. And
Absolutely.
please, I understand putting question mark behind it because
Right,
it's not.
right,
But
absolutely.
so it's to start pondering it.
Yeah. Well, and like RT said, I think you're going to be getting some rock solid options in June, once they have a little bit more time to get the information on the VRE and the private banks.
Well, I was talking about how you were thinking we are going to pay for it.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Okay, do you guys want to go ahead and approve the contract for Norman Company, Inc.?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we approve the contract for, who is it, Norman Construction?
Yeah.
Norman Company Inc.
Motion made by Mr. Jesse. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Crittenden. Any further discussion?
Is there any, it looks like we can wait on approving this contract for 30 days or so. Is there any advantage to us to do that financially speaking?
Would you like to ask RT or
Either one of
myself?
you, either one.
RT, I'll let you take the
Both
first.
y'all
crack at
been,
it.
I'd like to speak to it from a, let's call it the VRA option
Okay,
perspective.
that's fine.
As we've talked about, the collateral of the project and the financing would be the Puller Vocational Center, which is currently, according to your VACO insurance, it's an insured value of just roughly $1.5 million. With the renovations on top of that, obviously, it's going to increase in value. In order to pledge that as collateral and get credit for those renovations, you have to be under contract with the contractor before VRA prices its bonds for them to give you credit. And I would take it a step further. I would say a few weeks into June, I think that would have to be solidified because when they take the county to credit committee, after they've done all their underwriting, we've had our due diligence calls, we've helped VRA with their process. They're going to have to go to credit committee and say, okay, what kind of term sheet are we going to give to the county to say you're approved and this is what you got to do? One of those things we've preliminarily talked about is having enough collateral for the loan, and the way that they would give us credit for that is to have it under contract with the contractor, enter into that contract, construction contract, essentially before they go to committee. So that's not really the answer to your financial related question, but I think if you're contracted
Important
rate,
nuance.
it is a very important nuance. And I think to the financial part of it, I think Heather, you mentioned a minute ago, you're locked in at your unit pricing. So you have flexibility there, but I think if you've got it, a bird in the hand, before something, can they withdraw their proposed contract and say, we're out for some reason between now and 30 days or 60 days, or do they have to hold it firm? I know in the bank proposal, just speaking from my experience, banks can potentially pull back a proposal for some reason or another. There's usually language, but.
Well, of course, like all things, they could, but there would be financial consequences to that, and we could then enforce the procurement process to try and hold them to that. I don't get that impression from the contractor. The only thing I would say is if we delay beyond the 90 days as stated in the bid document, they're not required to honor their prices, and they're not going to.
Yeah,
Things will have
I'm not talking about
Yeah.
going past the 90 days.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say we sign the contract. How many days before we have to give them a notice to proceed?
So we tentatively, and I should have brought that, Vince, not able to talk. So within 7 days after the notice to proceed, I believe, well, They agree to commence work within 7 days after the notice to proceed is what we have put in our contract. We were gonna have a meeting, I want to say next week to kind of talk to the contractor because they're expressing that they're eager to get going. And we wanted to cut, and that's the exact phrase that's been used, what that meant. So we haven't given an exact time
I'm just
frame.
saying, between this 30 days we have, we
Mhm.
need to sign the contract to keep us locked in. But between the 30 days we have and the time that we have to issue a notice to proceed, that could be buying us 60 days of time or so. And 60 days on the kind of money we're talking about is a lot going on. But I want to make sure we're locked in everywhere. I don't want,
Right, right.
you know,
And
and I don't want to upset, you know,
I was
I'm
going
just trying
into
to
that.
strategically do what's best for Middlesex. financially.
Absolutely, Bill. And same here. I was going into the meeting on May 15th with the idea that we may give them a notice to proceed on May 15th after a successful pre-con meeting. When we talk about the logistics of them mobilizing. I know I spoke to the sheriff this morning. He's already moving some stuff into some storage facilities, getting ready to make some shifts, moving stuff out of the puller center, getting it all ready to go. So we're not in the way of the contractor. And the contractor's eager to get going. So
Matt, if I
So we
may.
do not know how many days, once this contract is signed, we really don't know how many days we have to issue a notice to proceed.
Don't have that readily off the top of my head.
Okay.
I mean, if you can give me, it's not a short contract.
Right.
If you can give me a moment to read through that. I wasn't prepared for that question. I
Okay,
apologize.
Thank you.
yeah, Ben's saying it right now, but nobody can hear it. I'm having fun with that. Again, just to be clear, well, we've had him on the phone. I think Kevin could probably get him back on the phone. Kevin, why don't you try to do that for me if you don't mind, sir? But again, I was intending to give a notice to proceed on May 15th.
Also, on May the 15th, if we gave him on May the 15th, he got 7 days or whatever to start. Then our first draw would be after that date,
Probably
whatever,
June.
whenever
Yes.
he start.
Yes,
So
sir.
we'll be getting pretty close to the time that we're gonna finance it. And it's looked like it's a goal most of the time, most of what we got.
Yeah,
So-
and again,
so-
and again, it's my intention, if the board is okay with that, to use some of the money that we've already budgeted within the project, the 300,000 that we have left in that capital fund, to cover any initial draws the contractor has between now and the fiscal year start in any event.
And that'll be minus off the total amount of the contract itself.
Everything we finance up front, unless I've told our financial advisor heretofore that we do not want a reimbursement resolution as part of this. We don't want any of the monies we've already spent because there's no sense borrowing that money and paying interest on it. We've already spent it. We've budgeted for it. And that's kind of a cost saving measure that I put in place for the project. When we discussed it last budget year, we put 500,000 in the capital budget, knowing the engineer was not going to cost, the engineering and design was not going to cost $500,000. So I think we're covered on that.
So basically, by us letting him do it, he can start earlier, so the project can get it over with.
And as Heather has said, we both got that loud and clear that he's very eager to get started on the project.
And you know,
He's very excited about working with Middlesex.
you know,
on that.
and how are we gonna pay for it? It's pretty simple. And I'm gonna say it like this, it was pretty simple. If we done the math, and when, you know, I'm gonna say you go in the cookie jar, and you keep on asking for more cookies. So all we gotta do is go look at $200,000 that, hey, you asking for stuff and you got it. Now, all of a sudden, now you're looking at a project and we asking it what it costs to do the project. To me, it almost, you laugh at it, you know, because we done already spent the money, we're gonna spend it twice. And that's how I see it. So, I'm ready to say, hey, let Matt go ahead and do what he need to do, you know, and because we can hold that date. If he don't go on the 14th, he go on the 21st. So either way, we'll get them started. We don't have to make a draw until he put everything there. So we're getting in the month of June.
Well,
And finance wise, we've been a met again. So everything be, you know, everything be ready to go. We wouldn't have to move
yeah,
any
and-
money.
And if I may, the bids came in at 3.3, which were surprisingly better than everyone expected. I know I won't name anybody, but many of us were thinking, oh my gosh, it's liable to come in at 5 million or 4.8 million. And we did get a bid for 4.8, so we weren't entirely wrong. We're really happy about this bid price. And Yeah, it's the best news I've had this budget year, and I've had some really good news. I've told all of you about all that. So, David Bushy and I were both very pleased with that bid. So y'all were kind of prepared to do it at 4.8. It's 3.3 now.
1.6. That's when it started at. We started at 1.6. So anything above that, I ain't crazy
Well,
about it. but
that's
we go
right.
ahead and do it.
That's right. Now I'm confident that I want to tell them the rate so bad, but I'm not. I'll do that offline. The rates we're hearing have been surprisingly better than what I was anticipating. I was bracing myself for 8 and 9%, and then they're not that. So anyway,
I think it's fair to say, while we're not at historical lows, we're at historically favorable rates. How about that? Slight distinction, but
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to say that, this project been long coming. And, I don't see where we need to belabor it and slow it up anymore. I mean, they're ready to roll. And I think, if you look at the old sheriff department that we have there, and something should have been done many years ago, but that's water over the dam. Let's get this thing rolling.
Any further discussion?
I was just going to comment to Mr. Harris's point. In the bid documents, we had put in, our engineer put in a schedule. And the notice to proceed tentatively was planned for May 13. And so, in looking through my notes, we did not specify, we wrote that time was of the essence and everything needed to be done and with liquidated damages. We did not require a specific time to issue the notice to proceed, but the understanding was that was going to be something we knew we would need to talk about with the contractor and have some flexibility, because we may have needed a little bit of a delay for our financing. He may have needed a little bit of delay. We wanted the flexibility to have that discussion, but he has to begin within 7 days after the notice to proceed. But tentatively, it was agreed May 13th. was
So
gonna
it's
be the time.
unspecified how long
Mhm.
a time frame we have to issue a notice to proceed
Yes,
once
sir.
we sign the contract.
Yes, sir.
Only thing I'm doing is just if we hold on to our money for a little bit, it's a little bit more we have for 30 days. But you feel confident that we have the money to pay for it?
I do, sir. I do. 3.3 million was a blessing that was given to us on this project. And boy, that's going to be quoted in the paper. I know we would prefer not to have to spend anything, but if the board wants to do this project, that was a great price. And especially in this bidding environment, which I'm going to be covering under my manager report a little bit later. So I am. Short answer is yes.
Further discussion? We have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the contract, pardon me?
I approved the contract with Norman Company, Inc.
Yes. For Norman Company, Inc. Roll call, please.
Mr. Crittenden,
Yes.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris.
Yes, motion approved. With that motion also, if I need to sign the contract or you,
It's board preference. I'm fine with it, or you can, Mr. Chairman, so however you want to. It's been a long time coming, like Wayne has said, so you may
okay,
want to.
well, I wanted the board to be aware that
Yeah.
one of us will execute that contract, either the administrator or myself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, moving right along. Okay, go ahead. Okay, next item, we're gonna discuss is, a donated van to the animal shelter. And in order for the county to accept that, there's a process that needs to take place. Ms. Riccardi, would you like to, bring us up to speed, please?
Absolutely. The animal shelter has been using a personal vehicle for some time to transport animals to and from the veterinary clinic, and the animal shelter, as well as picking up supplies for the dogs, crates, dog food. A very generous donor, who is also on the board of Pet Friends for Life, procured and presented to Middlesex County a 2007 Dodge Grand Caravan to be used for this purpose. It's been sitting at the animal shelter, and right now it is just waiting for us, the county, to accept it and to accept the title on behalf of the county. So obviously, my recommendation at this time is with great gratitude that we accept the donation for use at the animal shelter.
Did everybody hear that?
Would you like me to
Who's-
repeat it?
Hold on. We need to get the volume up a little bit.
Emery, can you say something, please, so we can see how loud that is?
I can certainly say more. I can say anything you want.
Hold on, hold on. That went too loud.
Brought the angels with you that time.
Try again.
Now, if you're ready for me to sing,
That's perfect.
There you go. Thank you.
There you go. And I apologize, but would you go over that one more time, please?
I would be delighted. Middlesex County Animal Shelter has been transporting dogs and equipment and food and supplies using personal vehicles for as long as I've known it. And obviously that's not the best way to do it. Because frankly, not everybody has a vehicle that can transport all that. An interested and generous volunteer, Michelle, who is also on the board of Pet Friends for Life, procured and presented to Middlesex County a 2007 Dodge Grand Caravan, specifically for use at the animal shelter. The only thing we have to do is obviously you, the board, have to be able to accept this donation. My recommendation right now is, of course, that we gratefully accept the donation of that 2007 Dodge Grand Caravan for use at the animal shelter.
Thank you. And Michelle Abertine, is that you, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was going to introduce her, but I didn't want to interrupt Anne Marie.
Go ahead.
First of all, we really are appreciative of Friends for Life, and they do a great job for us at the shelter, and they're a wonderful group of volunteers. I don't think I've met a more passionate group of people that care about animals or really care about anything more than y'all do. And when the van was demonstrated to me, I was amazed. It's a beautiful van, and I was just flabbergasted that somebody would purchase that and donate it to the county, which thank you for that. And we invited Michelle here tonight to talk to the board and with Anne Marie, get authorization to receive that wonderful gift.
Yes, ma'am. Would you like to say anything?
Sure, I just wanted to give you a little background. So, I am a retired, military officer and a Northrop Grumman employee for 20 years. But I'm also a volunteer. And while I was a volunteer, I had an opportunity to also assist as a cleaner because one of your employees needed to take vacation and there wasn't anybody to do that. So, I have had experience and I've witnessed the critical need of a vehicle. Prior, the manager had her own personal vehicle and she was taking the dogs to and from the spay and neuter clinic as well as the vets. But she no longer is an employee. So there's been a serious need for this. At some time, the animal control officer, he on occasion, or that group of people on occasion would take the animals, but it wasn't a dedicated time and we would miss appointments. So the vehicle, as Anne Marie mentioned, is a 2007 Dodge Grand Caravan. It's got three major doors on the right and the left and the back. It can fit 4 crates in it. I had it decaled. I wanted to donate it. I've estimated the maintenance cost to be somewhere around $600 for maintenance and another $600 for fuel and the liability. So what I'm asking for is for you all to support not only the donation, but to maintain the vehicle and the liability for those that drive it. It's I think there was 117,000 miles. I know that sounds like a lot, but those vehicles, I've checked into them and the reliability of them can go anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000. And you don't want a brand new vehicle to be torn up by some dogs. So I felt like it was a justifiable donation if you would accept that.
I'll just apologize for sometimes things being so cumbersome of just accepting a donation. But thank you very much. And you do live in Middlesex County?
No, sir, I do not.
Oh, you do not?
No.
Well,
I'm
we
of
need you to
Gloucester.
move to
We're working on that.
Middlesex County.
Sir, I'm on the river.
Well,
Hey, we got a couple of those too, you know.
again, thank you for the opportunity for you to be here. And thank you for seeing a need that we need and stepping up for that. We're very appreciative of that. So with that, it would be prudent for a motion to be made to accept the donation for the animal shelter.
I move that we do accept this very kind donation.
Motion by Mr. Crittenden on accepting the donation for the animal shelter, and I need a second.
Second.
And Mr. Williams has accepted it. Any further discussion?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Jesse,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Crittenden,
Aye.
Mr. Don Harris.
Aye, motion is accepted, and thank you again for the donation. We appreciate it.
No problem, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Righty. Everybody good? Anybody need a break? Are y'all good to go? Everybody's good to go? All right, let's continue. Item number D, HRSD update, change order request, Jeremy Buford.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, just a reminder, this is a continuance, I guess, from a work session the board had with Jeremiah. And I think Bowman Engineering was in that meeting as well. I think it was last May. Am I getting my dates right? May or June? Yep.
Yeah, I think it was
So,
June.
yep.
All right. You have the floor, sir.
Chairman, Board, thank you for having me. I'm here to introduce a task order to Bowman for the total of $82,485. That is a breakup of additional $62,335 for construction inspection and a $20,150 for construction administration services. The reason for this increase in CACI services is due to the longer duration to install gravity sewer than expected during the initial estimate of the CACI. They estimated that it would take approximately 4 to 5 months to install the gravity sewer, and we require a full-time inspector during gravity sewer installation. And it's taken about 8 months, so it's an additional 3 months of CI services that was required. That wasn't in the initial estimate. And the additional CA is for the additional work that's come about through the project. And in the agenda packet, I provided the backup information for the CI and CA. We are on the verge of completing this project, but we are without funds for additional construction inspection services, so we could potentially face a delay if we're not able to provide those services.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just had one. Jeremiah, could you tell us what's the full change order amount that you're asking for today?
$82,485.
And this would be paid to Bowman.
This would be to Bowman. The CA is a lump sum services, but will have to be reviewed. It will be treated as a task time and material, and so will the CI will be treated as time and material and be documented with time provided.
But all owed to Bowman.
Yes, all to Bowman.
And refresh my memory, isn't this the one where there were utilities that weren't discovered and that caused an issue, but we paid for them to be discovered?
That was for Tidewater Utility to move forward and relocate and work with Verizon. And it was tasked to HRSD to relocate the Verizon services to lower the initial cost of the change order for about $15,000 for HRSD to render the service instead of using the contractor to do it.
I thought Bowman played a role in that too, or am I getting, it's been a moment since we've talked about
This,
this.
this is not to deal with the Verizon task.
I'm a little confused, and you're going to get some more questions, as well, but, how does this discussion differ from the June, 23 discussion that we had?
So the initial estimate that came in was $120,000 from Bowman Consultant. And it was asked to relook at the price and come up with a price that is more aligned with construction services. So we've been able to continue the negotiation with Bowman Construction or Bowman Consulting. And we reduced that by $40,000 after a further review and understanding the duration of the remaining project.
This was one of the items that was going to be reviewed by HRSD and Bowman. Not one of the things that we had said in that meeting that the county was not responsible for.
That is correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Those items that they haven't been brought up and we are not moving forward with those currently for Tidewater Construction.
Well, and if you recall, and maybe you can help my memory a little bit, because part of that discussion at the time was the county didn't feel that we were responsible for the fact of not identifying the proper Verizon lines, et cetera, correct? And the drain field came in, and we ultimately capped off at Eddie's Auto Service at that point to not extend further cost for that.
That is correct. And that's not what this discussion is. This is to complete the CACI services for Bowman Consulting.
Well, let's just back up a second and we can play the recording if we need to. You just said a few minutes ago that part of that was identification of lines that were going underneath the road. Did you not?
No, I didn't say anything about lines on the road.
You said Verizon.
That was the question from Ms. Lewis.
Okay, so I'm even more confused.
So the estimated time to install the gravity sewer took longer than expected. This is to make up the time. HRSD requires full-time inspection for gravity sewer installation. And the initial estimate was 5 months, and it's taken an additional 3 months to install gravity sewer. We estimated a halftime during that, and we need full-time inspection during gravity sewer installation.
Okay, so we're looking to pay services now, not for what's already been done. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
This is to recoup funds that had to be transferred from other services to keep the project moving forward.
Okay, so let me just give you my problem, and then I'm gonna set back and let my blood pressure go down just a little bit. Number one, some of this is the first time I've heard about this. Some of this information is about a change order and what we're talking about. And I won't speak for the rest of the board members, but I would think that, and maybe I'll just take it a little bit leap. You're asking for a change order. And is that time sensitive at this point?
We can continue to move funds around to make it available, but it's going to become time sensitive. It isn't the first time that it has been brought up. It was mentioned that it was brought up in June, and it was asked to come back with a more reasonable number that felt better for the county.
I understand that, but that's June. Now you're on a time sensitive scenario, and it's the first time some of us have had any communication about that since June.
I believe we had a discussion earlier this month on this topic.
I have not been informed of anything other than change order that I heard about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3, that somebody was going to talk to us about change orders. And now here we are, and you're asking for some sort of action to take place when at least this board member is not fully informed on what's going on. And I'll sit back and let you think about that a little bit because you're probably going to have to answer a couple other questions.
I kind of like getting my hands wrapped around this a little bit myself. Bowman is the design engineer on the project, right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. And they also have contract to supply the inspectors,
That's correct.
which is normal in the industry, a normal thing to do. And HRSD is overseeing the project and help with the bidding process for and selected the contractor that's doing the work. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. The project was extended roughly, you said it was take 2 to 4 months and extended it to 8 months roughly?
The project has been extended due to general items. The generator took almost 18 months to procure and deliver. And there's other delays that were involved, the Verizon line that was mentioned earlier.
How many, so the total scope of the project was supposed to take how long?
It was supposed to take about 10 to 12 months and
10 to
we're
12
at
months. Okay,
18 months right now.
okay, roughly a year it was supposed to
Yeah.
take. How many, when you extended the time frame, how many of those days were for weather?
How many of those days were weather?
Yeah,
Really,
weather.
I have to go back and take a look at those exactly.
So we don't have that information with us today. Okay. All right. In here, they state that the delays were for the contractor's work schedule. There's one of them. This is on Bowman's
Yes.
documentation. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
The work schedule,
Of the contract, who was the contractor doing the work, by the way?
Tidewater Utility.
Okay. So Tower Utilities' work schedule delayed the project. So can you elaborate on that?
That was the delay for procurement of the generator and other light items that took longer to procure and receive. So generator was 18 months long on procurement, which is what we typically see currently.
Okay. And another one they say is materials delay.
That's the generator as well.
And then
the-
unforeseen. So what is unforeseen?
So the unforeseen were items that were not identified during the initial survey. So the Verizon, the drain fields
Okay,
that were mentioned earlier.
all right. So we had to delay this project, which is a year-long project. We're not sure if we gave any days for weather, which I would think would be uncommon on a year-long project outside. They probably got some days for weather,
Yeah,
I would think.
we have days identified in the contract
Mhm.
for what would be the expected weather days. I
Right.
just don't have that contract in
Okay.
front of me.
So what I'm saying is if the project has been extended, and the reason that it's been extended is for some weather days, some work schedule, and some material delays. Well, if we don't have any material and it's raining outside, what are they inspecting? Now, I've been on plenty of projects with inspectors there, and I know you require them for them to be there all the time. But if there's no work going on, that sounds like to me a management thing with Bowman going on. I mean, if there's nothing's happening, the inspector can't be inspecting. The inspector's probably in their vehicle looking at plans for another job. Being prudent, staying gainfully employed. There's nothing wrong with that, but what I have a problem with is nothing's happening and we're being charged for inspections. So if the job has been extended for nothing happening, we're only paying for an inspector when something's happening.
Yeah.
So it looks like to me that this here is something that I know you've gone to Bowman and told them to sharpen their pencil and work with them, everything. But I think it's a little deeper than that. It is assignment of your personnel. I think Bowman needs to look at that and maybe come back to you. They should assign the personnel something else to do when no work was going on. I don't think this even deserves a motion.
I have a question, forgive me, I just don't understand this. On page 101 of the board packet, there are two different fee schedules. One's at the top. I assume that has to do with, construction administration, and the one at the bottom is construction inspection. It appears that this $82,485 came from adding the additional fees from one to the other. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So we're we're paying we're paying a change order for the administration, but then we're also doing it for the inspection. I was just kind of out of the impression that the inspection was what this was all about.
No, it's for the two task orders, the CA, which was the 20,150, and the CI, which is the 62,335.
Okay, thank you.
Other discussion? Any other questions?
Just one, Jeremiah, I thought this was something that, our county engineer's been reviewing as well, and he's been working with you on it.
Yes.
Okay.
A liaison.
A liaison, okay. So he's reviewed this as well?
I sent it to him for review, yes.
Okay, okay. I'm sorry, he's not here today to be able to kind of add some on that with us.
Now, I will say that if you look at the CACI to construction cost, it is at 12%, which is significantly lower with this change order than we would typically see for a contract, which would be anywhere from 17 to 18%. So this would be in line with what we would expect, or lower in line with the change order than what we would expect for a contract of this size.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, we have two directions we can go. A motion can be made to approve the change order, or a motion can be made to table it until the next meeting and have more information exchanged between our engineer, yourself, Jeremiah, and or Bowman, if that needs to take place. What's the flavor of the board?
Mr. Chair, I think we need to table it. Not enough information. I no way in the world I can vote on something like this. And also, Matt, I want to hear something from you.
Okay.
All right?
I have a recommendation. I'm going to recommend that our county engineer and Jeremiah reach out to each one of you individually and sit down with you and really make sure you understand what they're proposing. And so there's clear understanding on it. Over the podium is not the best place to get that type of clear understanding. That has been a consistent recommendation of mine to our county engineer and to Jeremiah for quite some time regarding this change order. When we were first made aware that Bowman had come down substantially on their ask, I started that. And I understand that maybe Randy and Bill had a brief conversation about it. I haven't heard any of the rest of you have been briefed. So
On the phone.
on the phone briefly,
Randy and I went.
that was my understanding.
But to your point there, I mean, you got a company that sent somebody a bill and then they turn around and say, oh, yeah, we'll knock 30% off of it. I mean, are they being straightforward with us to begin with?
The change
I mean,
order was
that's another question
denied
mark.
back in June, if my memory serves. And when the changes had occurred, that's when I recommended that they get with you individually and brief you. And it's not so much to convince you or sell you on it. It's just so you understand, so you can make an informed decision. Yeah. You can't ask all the questions you may want to ask here today and a regular board meeting. Time constraints, not the least of which.
It's pretty simplistic to me. You can't be inspecting with you have no materials and the contractor's not on the job site and you got weather you have to deal with. What are you inspecting?
And I think that's a very valid point, Bill. Some of that type of discussion was held in June when we had the work session down at Cook's Corner.
I'm more for a motion of Bowman to address how they handle things, and this is their bill.
Then I would revise my recommendation and ask that Jeremiah and Charlie bring Bowman to those meetings to talk with y'all so you can ask questions directly of them. Thank you, Wayne.
County Attorney, do we need a motion to table this to the next or just table it?
I think a motion is warranted at this point.
Okay, before the motion is made, I think we were pretty clear in June regarding, and I apologize, Jeremiah, for you have to stand up there and take the whipping. But I thought we were pretty clear at the June meeting that number one, change orders are just not rubber stamped. And number two, we would want to know the information we need to know to make an informed decision. Am I correct on that?
You've made it clear.
I mean, you at the meeting, you knew how that went. So it's disappointing for wherever the chip was that fell, that didn't get that information to us, that now we have to discuss that in open forum, and ask questions and ask you to go back to Bowman and tell them what kind of flavor you got today here on that presentation. I thought we were pretty clear in June that moving forward, we wanted to be well educated about why a change order was put in, and that may have happened somewhat on your part, but the rest of us here, or the majority here, have not been well informed about that. So to come before us and expect a change order to be approved, it is a little uphill ride with Middlesex County. Motion would be in order to table this discussion until further information is gathered and discussed.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Mr. Jesse,
Second.
second made by Mr. Williams. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Crittenden,
Yes.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris.
Yes, motion is, will be extended until our next meeting.
Thank you, board.
Thank you. All right, let's see where we are here. Okay, next on the agenda is planning update, Broad Creek Dredge Projects update. Mr. Kretz, you're on the hot seat.
Oh, yes, sir. On a lighter note, I'm going to give a brief update on our dredge project in Broad Creek. So I think everything to report is good news. We have a consultant, a gentleman by the name of Mark Mansfield, who's really hard with Shore Consulting that is hawking this project. He's previous Corps of Engineers employee, was a regulator. He's staying on this. We have a lot of cooperation with our Corps regulators as well that want to see this project get to the finish line. So where we're at with this, Mark actually sent me 3 bullet points to go over, and I'm going to kind of briefly go over it. So I'm not sure if everybody on the board is aware, but our county dredge spoil site in Deltaville is actually a Corps dredge spoil site. It's our site, but it's also on their list of usable sites. So that site's always to be made available for their.
Middlesex would have to authorize anyone to use it.
We have an agreement with the Corps.
We have a binding agreement
a
with the
binding
Corps of
agreement
Engineers.
with The Corps of
dating back,
Engineers.
Yeah,
So they,
quite some time
so
where
the
they.
Corps of
do have that.
Engineers can decide that someone else can put their spoil sites there, and we don't have a say in it.
It's the
No.
Corps of Engineers.
It's generally for I'd have to read the agreement. I don't think it's for that. It's for the purpose of using, it's generally their responsibility to be dredging Broad Creek. So it's for that purpose of dredging the creeks in this area.
Well, okay. All right, let's go to a different end of it here. We've taken spoils out of there by truck.
Correct.
Did Middlesex get some funding for that?
That's a very good question. We actually put the spoils out for bid several years ago. And I think the high bid, don't quote me on this, I think it was $1 or like $10 or something. And then we had to go back and try to work with the high bidder to get it out, and he then decided he didn't want it. So then the board after that surplus the spoils, and we offered it to local contractors. They just had to come in and do a quick little training with us, make sure they knew where to dig and what not to hit and disrupt our dewatering devices.
Right.
So that's actually what removed, I think, approximately 70,000 cubic yards of sand went out of there to.
Yeah, a lot of trucks, yes.
Yeah, a lot of trucks.
Yeah.
But the board did have to
So
start.
basically, we gave away the sand to make room for another dredging.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it became evident that we weren't going to be able to bid it. I mean, I personally think it's good, high quality white beach sand. Someone evidently thought so too, because a lot of it went over to Lancaster County, not naming names. But it is valuable, and being able to store it's valuable too. So it's something that I think we would want to revisit after this next dredge,
Well, it
depending on the
sounds-
quality of the
It
sediment.
sounds like we may have a handle on how to get rid of the spoils. But this question has come up now that it sounds like another entity could authorize someone else to put spoils there. Even though it belongs to Middlesex, the Army Corps of Engineers could say, hey, you can put your spoils there. I mean,
Yeah, I don't believe it's for that. I think it's for the intent of Broad Creek, because Broad Creek is a federal channel.
I think we need to anchor down that Middlesex should be the approving body for any spoils to go on that site.
Well, we have a binding agreement with the Corps that goes back to 1984. in this matter.
And that agreement allows for,
It's,
maybe we need to look at it and talk again.
yeah, I
Okay,
can get you the
okay.
details.
Okay,
on
let's
it.
look at it.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
I mean, I'll send you the
Okay, what's the quick
agreement.
The quick answer is, in order for the Corps to dredge Broad Creek back when they used to dredge it, they had to have a place for the spoils, and we had to have a binding commitment, since we own the property with them, to allow them to utilize that for that purpose. That's my understanding. Now, I'll go back and refresh my memory before you and Dave meet, but I think that's what it was.
And where
Yeah.
my mindset is protecting that spoil site. Middlesex will have to go to, I mean, an individual could come in and say, hey, I'm going to do something on my property and I want to be able to put something over there. And lo and behold, we don't have a say in it. So I want to make sure
Oh, yeah.
that we have an anchor.
It wouldn't be
Dave,
for
I'm
that. I
pretty-
can guarantee you it wouldn't be for that.
Yeah, I'm
No.
about 99%
I can-
certain the
I
general
will
public
say, I
cannot
will
use it.
sit up here and say that. it will not be for that purpose.
And we have rules and guidelines in place to assure that.
Yeah,
I mean, I know we're all saying that. I
The-
know
the
we're all
co-
agreeing to it, but if we don't have rules and guidelines to enforce that, then
well,
we
the
really don't have it.
Corps is not going to get involved in a private dredge as to where those spoils can go. They can't dictate that those spoils, that's going to be that individual's issue to find this proper spoil site. So the Corps is not going to step in and say, okay, we'll take care of your spoils. They're never going to do that.
The sand is
Their
filled in.
spoils are their issue.
The sand has filled in around my dock. I'm hiring a contractor to dig it out. I need somewhere to dump it. And I want to dump it on that spoil
It's
site.
not going to go there. I guarantee it.
Unless the board gives them approval, they cannot
Unless
do
the
that.
And
board
we
did,
have,
right.
and we have something in place that's, we don't have to come to the board and say, oh, here's something that just came up. Somebody wants to dump it. We got to do something. We have laws in place now or guidelines in place that would prohibit
Well, the
that.
purpose of this was, this is a
For the
federal,
creek, I
for a
understand.
federal channel.
I agree.
And it's for that purpose of, so the Corps, at some length of time, will have a place to put the spoils for their federal channel.
Okay.
That's
Yeah, but
the
I
purpose,
think-
that's the purpose of that.
I think I know where Bill's going.
Yeah.
We don't have a policy for a private citizen to come in here and dump spoils in there without the board approving. So let me,
We should have a policy that if we require,
well, they just can't. They could no more do that than dump it out here in the courthouse lawn. Give an analogy here. We don't have a policy on how we receive a van that's donated to us for the animal shelter. Therefore, they had to come to the board and get approval for that.
yeah,
The same would go with your situation where you have sand around your dock. You can't just use our spoil site as trespassing. Yeah, you'd have to get board authorization to use it. And we would probably recommend, no, don't allow them to use it because we
Right.
have enough capacity there for Broad
I
Creek.
think we need something in place that they don't have to come ask the question. You don't have to come to the board.
Right.
No, it's
It-
not for that.
Well, no would be our answer, but we don't have a written directive from the board saying, say no. We just know to say no because we have a
We
binding
just
agreement with
say-
the Corps of Engineers that is for Broad Creek. But I think I understand what you're saying.
I don't want us to get caught with our.
Right.
Saying, you know, you've let other people do this and now, because you don't have a policy in place.
Yeah, we've let people take it out because the board surplus it and authorized us to start that. We don't let people bring it in.
No.
Yeah, the answer is no,
No.
but
So all of the legal components with the Corps and our agreements are in place that satisfies the Corps' standards for us to put the material there. So everything is good on that front. all letters and all, we had to show proof that we owned it, in order to do it. So all the proof has been sent to the Corps, all that legal work has been done. We've been meeting with Mark Mansfield and we met with, Mike Anderson with the Corps on site. Mark was able to, I guess, pull some strings and get the Corps out there to actually evaluate our, spool site. This spool site's in the same registry as, Carini Island and those type of things. Yes. Yes. It's a big deal. It is. So the Corps periodically inspects us and they pulled another inspection on it. And there were a few issues. Primarily, there's some of the catwalks are starting to decay and they're not safe. They have these sluice pits that they have for dewatering and that type of thing. So you need a catwalk to get out to it. Matt and Charlie and Dwayne and I met on site to kind of get a strategy together. Dwayne's going to fix those particular catwalks. We'll get those prepared. They noted that I believe don't quote me on this. I believe Mike made a rough estimate that this could hold about 58,000 cubic yards of material, just as it sits right now. The grading will because when they took the spoil site out, the floor was not dressed up. So part of the JPA will dictate and what type of method is used, whether it's hydraulic or mechanical, will dictate the grade in the pit. And that'll be part of the contract that we work with the contractor that's going to do the dredge work. They'll have to prepare the cells for the material as well. We don't know how to grade that yet because we're not sure what type of dredge we're going to use. We left that open for convenience, really, and cost. One may be better cost or maybe quicker. So we left the door open on the type of dredges that the contractors could use. So we looked at that. We've addressed the issues. That's going along. And so the testing has been done for the core samples for sediment and contaminants. It's been pulled out, is sent off to the laboratories. And I think Mark's saying we should have back that from Seaward or Biogenic Solutions, roughly from around May 20th, we should have those test results back. So once we get those test results back, Waterways, which is they do a lot of design work for you. Everybody's probably, if you worked in that area, you probably heard of them too. They do a lot of the dredge work design. And so they'll be submitting our application. So once we get that information back, we can proceed with the joint permit application process and get that permit application in.
There is a window though when no dredging is allowed. Is that correct?
That will be vetted with the permit process. We will find that out in that permit process, whether there is or whether there isn't.
It depends on the mating season of that tiger beetle.
Yeah.
Because I was under the
And
impression they
sandbar
had to
shark.
shut down hole in the wall here coming up.
Well, they had sand sharks that were present, sandbar sharks or whatever. So.
And one other thing, the spoil site, for us to get it in shape to receive the spoils, what kind of money are we talking about?
It'll be in the contract price. It depends on the type of dredge. We don't know that number yet, but it'll be baked into the contract for the.
So it's not something Middlesex is gonna have to do separately before we sign the contract and stuff?
No, we're gonna bake that into the contractor's responsibility.
But are you anticipating it being, less than $50,000?
I have no idea what it's
No,
gonna be.
okay.
It's basically dressing up the floor. The side slopes are in good shape.
The catwalk that Dave mentioned earlier, I already have our staff repairing the catwalk. It's just some
Good.
rotten boards and things like
Yeah,
that.
Good, that's why I was, okay.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
what I
that-
thought you were going.
Yeah, Bill,
Yeah, excellent.
that part's minimal. That's in-house.
Yeah,
So that
okay,
should be
excellent.
fairly inexpensive, yeah.
Thank you for that.
But they're gonna have to shape that floor up to get that. My understanding, one type of dredge will have more volume of water in it, obviously hydraulic. They might have to lower that grade to hold that water in so it doesn't release as quickly. So there's different types. They'll have to design that with the type of dredge they do. So So like I said, our consultant's been really proactive about trying to, he took the old permits and he's using those as models. I mean, a lot of times with, we get them with site plans or whatever, people submit something, say, well, we'll just make it work out as we go along and we'll figure out. Mark's been very proactive to go to the highest standard and try to think of everything with a lot of communication from the Corps. We have communication with DEQ, with water quality. So all of these, he's got these people talking, VMRC, so that we're gonna have, hopefully the skids are greased as much as we can going forward, but this thing will go at a fast pace. Once it does get into the permit review process, well, we should have all the check boxes done. Now, things always pop up, we know that, but we think we're doing a really good job of getting things right before we submit it. That way we can move this along pretty quick.
So just any idea, any ballpark idea, any guess on how long the permitting process will be?
That's a hard item to guess.
I thought that would be the answer.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's.
Because if they find.
I do know that we have
unicorns.
some of the best core regulators, that some of the higher ups that are very cooperative, understanding our situation, understanding that this is probably something they should be doing, but they don't have the funding right now to do it. So they're very amenable to moving this along at the fastest pace possible. So
And every opportunity we get, we make sure we double down on that, because just between last September or last October, when we had a conference call about it, and this past spring, when we went out on a boat and toured the open into Broad Creek, it had silted in quite a bit just in that length of time. So they understand that we are on a clock here, and if we're already down, I'd say 1.5 lanes coming in and out. If we get down to no lanes, we're going to have to really move vigorously to open up Broad Creek. Yeah. So.
And I would be remiss to not mention, excuse me, our local marina owners that are cooperating with this. I mean, I know Brian's been very helpful with the whole process, and I called up John. We had the sampling contractor had a large metal skiff, and of course we know we have a ramp issue in Deltaville. So John actually took the boat offloaded it and loaded it back on the man's trailer and coordinate, all I had to do was pick up the phone to John, or if I need Brian, any of these guys would help out whenever they could to, I don't want to throw all the stuff on, I'll disperse my favors, I guess but they've been very helpful in trying to make this go forward. So I want to mention that particular segment of that industry is helping with this process as well. I want to make sure that everybody's aware of that.
Very good.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Kretz.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna ask that we take a 7-minute break, 10-minute, 7 to 10, and then we'll come back. Okay? Please cut your mics off. Okay, I'd like to bring the Board of Supervisors May 7th meeting back to order, please. And with that, Trent Funkhauser has the podium discussing the discussion of the award for bid and abandoned and derelict vessels.
ADVs
Yes.
and the IFB. So we're here to update you on our status in terms of what the board authorized at its April meeting. We did start an IFB process, IFB 2402. We had a pre-bid conference and had 2 interested bidders. We ultimately received 1 bid, which is there, and I can click through it. So anyway, that started on the 19th and the bids were due the 3rd. That's why we did not have complete information. So we were on a kind of tight time frame. And that's also the reason we only received a bid on 3 boats, because it's the 3 easiest boats to get. 2 sailboats and a cabin cruiser, if you will. The one out in Piankatank that people have complained about for years, Stampers Bay. There's 1 sailboat in Broad Creek and 1 sailboat in Jackson Creek. Now, the contractor did indicate that he was interested in bidding on the sunken vessels, but did not have time to investigate them, which is understandable because we didn't have the typical 30-day process. Of course, the IFB process that we did run was consistent with procurement, but again, we were on a tight time frame to do this, get whatever bids we could, and then return to y'all in May because VMRC's fiscal year is ending and they would like to obligate these funds as quickly as practical. So the 1 boat, and I can click through these if you like, but the 1 boat you see up there is 13,000. If I can click through these right, and so that's at Jackson Creek. Then the other one is the cabin cruiser at Piankatank. Did I cruise through these backwards? Apologies, it was backwards. And then that's the other sailboat, Timberneck. My understanding, it was kind of tied up there just because it was kind of drifting around. But in any event, we've had the county administrator and I had a conference call with VMRC yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. Kind of a blur sometimes, but yesterday, because we wanted to make sure that VMRC was going to be satisfied with the 3 bids that we received because they were a little bit higher, particularly the one at 40,000. We had estimated, the board had authorized up to 10 boats and we had estimated about $10,000 a boat. Apparently the contractor, this is the same contractor that was awarded the Gloucester work. That contractor realized that he had woefully underbid at Gloucester, but we did not know that at the time. So not our problem. That's his problem with Gloucester. But VMRC also understands that they're working on getting administrative approval for these 3 vessels. And if they cannot get internal administrative approval, their next meeting is the 4th Tuesday in May. So we'll get full commission approval. But right now, the county has been awarded $100,000. But again, that was based on approximately 10,000 a boat. And they recognize that some of them could have been higher, some of them could have been lower.
Yeah, Trenton, I was gonna make sure the board was aware of that. We actually did receive the grant. We were awarded the grant for up to $100,000 and maybe more if we need it.
Yeah, it was a verbal award on the 23rd and they have not gotten us, excuse me, it's not grammar. They have not sent us any formal grant agreement that is associated with this project that would typically be done. So Ms. Lewis hasn't had a chance to review that, nor has the county administrator or myself, but it's a pretty typical grant agreement. It's just we need to make sure that before we proceed, VMRC is authorizing those 3 boats at those 3 prices. So there's no misunderstanding.
We have realized there are other boats. Some of them are actually in private marinas where and we asked our VMRC rep, I guess, Rachel, how those are handled in the past. And I think in order for us to use some grant monies to dispose of those boats, we want to reach out with the private marina owners to make sure what efforts they've exhausted to try to get those boats out. Making sure that there was a substantial attempt by the private property owner to try to get the properties or the boats removed first. And then I didn't get a strong inkling from our friends with the state that they would mind paying for those boats removals too. But the kind of prove an effort was made to try to get the private property owner to move the boat and or exhaust some other methods first. So we're aware of several other boats that will probably be phase two or maybe an amended agreement under this grant. But we want to reach out to the private marina owners to see what efforts they've had.
So you don't think that we'll have to do a completely new application for the other boats that we had asked about? Or do we know the answer to that?
We will not have to do a different application, but we will probably have to go through some discussions with VMRC over the next couple of months. And again, it's kind of tight. So for example, I don't want to promise what I can't deliver or think that I'm not going to be able to deliver. We might be able to run an IFB process. We might be able to run some contract amendments. That would be up to some other discussions with Ms. Lewis. We only wanted to get done what we could done with legal, VMRC, and y'all in the interest of time. So
Okay.
again, there wasn't adequate time to investigate the boats. That's why we didn't get bids on the ones that were sunken, if you will, actually really sunken. So, but again, the contractor said he was interested. So what you have before you is I think, did you hand it out? Yeah, you have a sample motion to authorize us to proceed on those 3 boats. We'll do what we can between now and the end of June with VMRC. But we'll have to see, 1, what we can do, and then 2, legally and procurement wise, how we have to do it. And if that's possible, we'll do it. But if not, we're just going to have to wing it, meaning go with the 3 boats only. Pray that there's some sort of funding next year. We also didn't get a warm feeling about that either. There are some alternative sources that we have not explored yet. Apparently there's some federal sources that may or may not be applicable in these types of situations. So we haven't had a chance to research that yet on our own or with the PDC. We'll of course pursue those options if they're available. But again, you know, drawn to a close at the end of the fiscal year, it's kind of awkward to get all this done. So we've done the best we can, and we appreciate the board indulging us in terms of working through this process thus far.
And-
Y'all have acted as promptly as we've asked you to do, and we've acted as promptly as y'all have asked us to do.
And when is their year in again?
Their fiscal year in, what's that? Yeah,
June
for
30th.
grant purposes, it's June 30, even though the state's on a slightly different fiscal year.
Okay, and we've already been awarded 100,000, is
Been
that
awarded
correct?
100,000.
Because this motion, total cost not to exceed 65.
That's to authorize the contract for these 3 boats in accordance with the IFB.
What happens with the grant money when it gets to June and we haven't exhausted that or used that? Is that just
It
roll over?
goes to the fund balance for the Commonwealth, or it rolls over in VMRC. Frankly, I do not know how they handle that type of funding.
Okay, but unlikely that we'll, I say
Yeah.
unlikely, that we would be able to use that additional 35K between now and June. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what
Or-
you're hearing.
or June
and
30.
We'll continue to have that conversation with
Okay.
VMRC.
Okay.
When we pressed them, we really didn't get a good answer, but they did the best they could in the moment.
Okay. Any other questions for Trent?
Trent,
Yes, sir.
what are we gonna, contractor's gonna come and remove the boats?
Yes, sir.
Will we get any kind of documentation or information back from the contractor?
Yes. We're not requiring demolition permits, but Dave Kretz's office, Mark Longus is aware of this. He and I have had some conversations. There's some standard procedures that are required for handling these types of boat demolitions, best practices, if you will. So VMRC is going to help us with that, as well as the contractor knows what they're responsible for when they're dealing with hazardous materials and that type of thing.
Is any,
This is an experienced contractor. And so we are going to get a demolition plan, and we're going to monitor that, but the contractor is totally responsible for complying with all applicable regulations.
never can tell what happens in the future. So I would like as much
Right.
detail as we could get from the contractor, basically itemize the $40,000 to remove the 1 boat, so many hours that they utilize their vessel to be out there, so many man hours at their rate. Is any kind of way we can get that from them?
We did not request that information, and
So
the
we're too far
contractor
down the
could
line to get
always,
that.
the contractor could always decide to document that as he wanted. What I thought you were referring to is the actual compliance with regulations.
Yeah, well,
Ultimate
I wanted to
disposal
hear,
of the
I
boat.
wanted to hear that too, but
Right.
I'd also like to, be able to have some documentation that tells us what the actual cost is, because we may be
Right.
bidding this again. And if we think one is high, I like to have the numbers, as Reggie says,
Well,
to
that's
see
why
if
we're
it's
also,
actually high.
that's where we're also getting VMRC. We're not trying to be cavalier because we're dealing with tax
Right.
dollars because they're your tax dollars and mine.
Well, would you say something to
But
VMR?
Gloucester didn't, I mean, Gloucester, and to my knowledge, the other localities that have done this, they just get lump sum bids for the removal. Or it's not as itemized as you're referring to.
Would you talk with VMRC and ask them about if they can put a little pressure on the contractor, working with them to itemize it? Because it would help VMRC in the future too.
Right.
Okay.
And our fear, well, never mind.
Okay.
Sometimes
you can.
Sometimes you do that and the bidder's like, nah, pass.
We'll get them sign a contract first.
That's what I mean. They'll just, I'm not interested in providing that level of detail, but we'll see.
We don't jeopardize moving those boats. We need them out of
Right.
there.
Well, those three, yes.
Okay, action at hand. You have the potential motion for 24-02 abandoned or derelict vessels. A motion would be in order.
So move.
I'm so sorry. I need you to read the motion as it was presented to you. Sorry, I know
All
it's a
right.
long one.
I thought you just read it.
I apologize. That was the pointed draft in it.
I move the Board of Supervisors declares RPM Services as the lowest and most responsible bidder for IFB 24-02 abandoned or derelict vessels, ADV, removal, and hereby authorize the county administrator to proceed with negotiations of a contract with RPM Services to remove the 3 ADVs at the respective costs cited in the bid, with a total cost not to exceed $65,000. All subject to approval by the Virginia Marine Resource Commission, VMRC, and the county's receipt of VMRC's grant award.
Thank you so much, but it's 65,500. Sorry. We didn't have documents in the packet, so that's why.
Yeah.
Not to exceed 65,500.
There you
Thank
go.
you so much.
Motion by Bill Harris. Second would be in order.
Second.
Second by Randy Crittenden. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bill Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Crittenden,
Yes.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris.
Yes, motion is carried. Thank you,
Thank you,
Trent.
gentlemen and ladies,
Thank you, John.
because it's been a team.
Trent, would you come here just for a second? Okay, moving right along, we have, item G. Under regular agenda items, Rappahannock Central Elementary RCE Renovation Committee, and Miss Anne Marie, I believe, if you're still on, we'd like to hear from you.
You can't get rid of me that quick.
Okay, great.
This was actually on your agenda for last month, and because I wasn't able to present, you postponed it, which is great. But what I have in front of you, you all back in 2024 in January, the board created a committee to discuss the use of the RCE cafeteria. Among these members and the attendees were Dave Kratz, David Self, Wayne Jesse, Reggie Williams. Then we had Rebecca Morgan, Haley Holmes, Shanae, right there, Shanae, Tyler Reidenbach, Mickey Sampson, Zanetta Brewington, Danielle Norris from the schools, Megan Hall, Amanda Callis. So we had a bunch of people that got together to say, what would we like to see, what would happen here? And they came up with this idea. In fact, we sat right where you're sitting one day and threw out ideas. And if you look in your packet, you'll see those ideas on page 111. Now, they weren't all like good ideas. And thankfully, you didn't get to see the picture I drew, because I drew a picture in Word and it wasn't a very good idea, but it wasn't a very good picture. What they were saying is, this is what we'd like to see done with this building. And they said, we don't know where to go from here. We need to have a professional come in, give us some guidance. So that was where we ended at the last meeting. Was we can't go any further without a review of this, without a review of the facility by a professional to even see if these ideas are feasible. So To that end, I kind of in my mind, I knew we started off with a budget of $320,000 this year. I moved some of that, as you may recall, to the basketball court. I think it was $150,000. Regardless, we still have well over $100,000 in this RCE budgeted line item for capital. What I was thinking was to reach out to, and I reached out to Bay Design to say, Bay Design, can you give us, because we have a relationship with them, can you give us a engineering or feasibility study of this project? And they said, we can't do that. That's not something we would do. They gave me some ideas of who to call. And then subsequently I contacted Matt. And Matt said, we used Antero's PC a while back for our county project. So I reached out to them and I reached out to a man named Mr. Gil Ensminger. Mr. Ensminger, as soon as I started talking, he's like, you're not going to believe this. I'm working on 2 projects just like that right now. He says, I will give you a kind of a proposal of what my product would be for you. And in the back of my mind, I was imagining the price be about $35,000 to $60,000, which was certainly within range. And it came back at, let's see, sorry, came back at $47,275. Sorry, I was on another page. And that's what I'm asking for today. I'm hoping I'm heading in the right direction that the board wanted, and that is to keep this project moving before this building goes down any further. If we'd started this project 10 years ago, we obviously wouldn't be where we are now, where we're looking at holes in the ceilings, walls. You all have been there. It's a mess that it's going to require a lot of work to correct. So I'm hoping that by pushing this next step forward, it's what the board was hoping this committee would do. So what I'm asking for right now is for your consideration of approving the Antero's design to develop the concept study consistent with what the committee has requested. They said it would take 2 to 4 months, depending on our participation, how we were able to, me and county staff were able to cooperate. And if you're interested in doing this, I feel like I'm rambling. If you're interested to do that, approve the county administrator to sign a contract. If not, let me know what else we want to do. I'm done.
Questions for Ms. Riccardi? I have one. I'm assuming if we approve this, that there'll be a itemized cost structure from what it will cost to do whatever that the committee wants him to look at, but particularly a cost factor of repairing of the roof as an example, which is the main reason that we decided to look at this, and then whatever other costs associated with whatever recommendations for construction would be prudent, correct?
Right. In fact, if you look on page 110, I think it's line item number 11, provide a conceptual cost estimate of the proposed renovation with breakdown of major building components, which is exactly what you just said. Now, that being said, Matt, we just listened to professional engineers come up with a big project dollar amount. And they're engineers, they're still not going to be perfect. They could say something's going to be 300,000, ends up being 600,000, but it's a start. So yes, that is part of the Antero's Designs project for us.
I've read the list of the RCE brainstorm ideas. I think some of them are really good. But before we have this company start, making a plan, are we putting the cart before the horse? Would it be better for us to maybe settle on what they're going to do, what we want to use the building for? Because if we're going to be using it, say, for instance, for an entrepreneurial component, it might be different than affordable childcare. And so whatever we're doing, it seems like if we give this company a better idea of where we want to go with this, rather than, unless they just want to give us a whole conceptual plan and say, this is what each one of these will do, but that's gonna take a lot of work.
Okay, I'm gonna show you what I did. I don't know if this will work. Can you all see this picture?
Yes.
This is a picture literally that the group came up with from all of this that items 111 to 33. They said basically they would envision this one way or another with one side of the building being set up for the entrepreneurship, for obviously we're not going to do a the laundromat was just an idea that we needed, but things like this would be a community component and then a big group area to meet the community center components. So again, I'm sorry, but this is really as good as it gets with me.
So that's
the
not an
diagram.
architectural design there.
She got her MBA, not in architecture.
It's close. It's really close. But honestly, I did send that design to Entenman, to Mr. Ensinger, and he got it. And the group that was sitting around the table, although again, it's ugly. And Shanae, you were there. You laughed too, but they at least understood that that's what everybody was thinking. We want part of the building to be reserved for little meeting rooms, maybe places where a company could, where people could have little Girl Scout troops. You know, maybe have a 15, I don't know if we do Girl Scout troops. We talked about that type of thing, where 15 girls can meet in a room and not be in the big area. So that was what these 4 rooms at the one end would be all, at the one end would be all about.
Okay.
So
Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
you were right.
Any other discussion?
Wayne, you've looked at it and it needs a roof.
Yeah, he's been on the roof.
And I take it before me, and I'm including myself now, the board is committed to making this, something happen there at this building, correct? That,
Yes.
so I'm having a problem with us spending some money to see what we want to do while the roof is falling down. To me, I would think that we would get a contract to repair the roof so that we're stabilizing the building. And on a second note, I'm really appreciative of the people taking their time and putting this list together and stuff they've done here. But I think Middlesex can take that building a lot further than this. I do. I think it's a cafeteria. And I think we need to elaborate on the fact that it was a cafeteria. Yes, we can still do some of the things on this list. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. But it's focal point. Middlesex could do something with the kitchen theme. Because food makes the body whole, so forth and so on. We could do something that would really, really set us off. Put us on, when we're on the map, but put us in a better position on the map. People who want to come there to be able to experience some of the things that you could offer. I think we could do a lot that would help all of Middlesex as far as tourism and still be able to accomplish some of the things that are on this list. I think we should worry about fixing the roof to stabilize the building before we go spending another $47,000 telling us what we need to do when we already know we need to fix the roof. That's what I got to say.
Yeah, Bill, oh, go ahead, Anne Marie. What you want to say?
The only reason why we weren't going to recommend to just fix the roof is because there's more to it. There was talks about how to restructure the roof because it's the flat roof. What exactly needs to be done depends on what you're going to do with the rest of the building, how you are going to structure the roof. There were ideas about doors and windows and how all that would affect the structure of the roof. So I think that's why nobody said, let's just put a roof on it, because you've got, let's say then you got $700,000 that you're just going to change when you do all the ideas that you just suggested for fixing the facility.
I hear your point. And I see a logic there. I'm still saying if we're committed, it's going to need a roof.
Well, Bill is right with that. You know, that roof been leaking for a while, but structurally, the building is a good sound building with the rosin floors and the big solid beams that come through there. you know, and cement, I mean, if you replace the windows and do some other things on it, but he does have a point there, but like I say, a multi-purpose use building. I know you got a lot of different things people say they would like to have it, but the roof really would need to be fixed. And if you think about it, just like they're down at the YMCA, same type of building, but bigger and longer. And you know, you can do a roof, shade roof or whatever, depending on, you know, how you're gonna put your HVAC or whatever, you know, and that's the thing. But I know we said a lot of ideas, but basically, like Bill was saying, I think they need to also get the roof straight first, and then work on the other things. And you know, I just want, you know, other ideas of what people want to think about here as a board supervisor, because we do need a building like that in this area, just like Bill was saying, you know, for you know, people to come here and see different things and decide, and you know, exactly what we want to do with the building. But that roof needs to be fixed. I know we put money aside before, and you know, and then when it was going to be a Tractor Supply that me and Reggie said we didn't want right there. We wanted it out here. But that's another story. But what I'm just saying now, where it's located now, it can be used for a lot of different things. That's all I can say. And it would be a shame to just say tear it down and put up a metal building or something like that, because if you think about it, you got cinder blocks, brick, and real solid beams that go across there. And if you don't know, you can look at the same one they got down at Wilton, that what they did there. So I'm just letting you know, I don't want to hear it tearing down. I'm just telling you straight up, because you're not going to build nothing at this price, what I'm saying, and that structure is sound. You got to do some other things to it now. But other than that, you know, the materials in that building, I'm just saying solid, and, you know, and energy efficient windows, and, you know, HVAC and stuff like that.
And like Wayne said, I want to get the terrazzo floor out there on the record again. We could not afford to install a terrazzo floor now. And all it needs to do is be buffed out, and it's going to look great. And where they are, people preserve them. Last thing we would want to do is jackhammer that thing up, because you'll never be able to afford to replace it. Just
Yeah, I
can't.
think,
If you can find somebody to do the work.
I think, the most important thing you said is to button the building up. Make it weatherproof, because then it buys us time to do the other things that we'd like to do in there. But if we let the building deteriorate due to weather, then we're just getting ourselves farther and farther behind.
Totally up to you all. If you want to
Um,
issue RFP for roofs instead of this, then we can do that.
well, thank you very much for what you've done so far. And I think, Bill's correct on that, as well. I see this project as, let's stop the deterioration of the roof, which is causing other problems, potentially in the building. But, I want us to be very careful about fixing the roof is one thing, but projections, irregardless of what the cost of that we could do this, and this, that may be a little bit premature given the sheriff's office, given several other big projects that we have going on. So to spend that money now for a developmental process of what we think we could do with the building, I'm not sure that makes a whole lot of sense. I think fixing the roof makes some sense, but to me, that project of renovation of the building is probably at least 4 projects down from what's already in front of it, the way I see it. And you know, we're already discussing what we're paying for and how we're paying for it and what kind of stress that's going to be, going forward. I'd hate to spend that to get some sort of conceptual design, and then we feel the pressure to move forward with it under a time frame that might not be conducive to what the county needs. For instance, it may be 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road before you would be able to get to that point of the project. Now, fixing the roof is something that could be done quicker, and then we set and wait for the timing to what else you want to do with that. I don't know that, feeling the pressure of having a nice designed building of what we could do, and then we say, well, maybe we need to wait on that for financial issues that we have with other projects that we're going on. So my contention would be we take care of fixing the roof, and then everything else falls behind that at some point.
I don't
And
know
you
how to
can,
bid a roof.
huh?
I don't know how to bid a roof.
I don't know
or
how
the
to bid a
repair.
roof.
So again, we're gonna have to hire a professional, so I will have to come back with that, I would think, because I have no idea. But this is there's holes in it, plus it's isn't it a flat roof? It's a completely different structure.
One thing that I
So
think we have to our advantage is what Wayne was bringing up. We own a building that it was done to. Wilton, right?
Yeah,
and they raised it.
yeah.
They raised it into an angled roof.
Walton Construction did the one in Delta,
And
in
Hartfield.
Hartfield.
Right. So
And then see, and
these two buildings are very similar.
very, very similar. Yeah, yeah.
So we may have something to look at that would help with what you're saying, I think. I hope, okay.
When we looked at replacing the roof before, we actually had Jimmy Walden come and look at it and give us a preliminary estimate. I think the estimate was 120,000, but that was a while ago. Yeah, 120 is not going to touch it now. Well, maybe it will. Let's be optimistic. Let's hope we get a bid for 120. But a lot of the work they did for the YMCA, I think his company donated some of the labor and the expenses of doing it. We can have our building inspector go take a look. But just to reiterate, I think what Wayne and Emery are saying, having an idea about the use may dictate what you do with the roof. It's the chicken or the egg, right? I mean, if you want to do something and we put a roof on it that prohibits that, now we've done something. Having said that, I agree. We need to stabilize the roof as much as we can. I think the last time anyone was on there, it was Wayne, and he stabilized it. It was another guy? You wouldn't go up there again?
I went up on there just,
You had to look at it?
they had left some plywood there, but then they conflict of interest, they had somebody else.
That's fine. That's right. Well, yeah, it wasn't a pay thing, just for the, yeah. So long story short, 100% agreement, but having an idea what you want to use the building for will probably make it a much more informed bid on what kind of roof you want to put on it. I wouldn't recommend you go back with a flat roof.
Oh, no.
It'd be a roof at least, right?
Right. And also too.
Once we have our in-house people go down to Hartfield and look at that one.
They
And
were
work up a little something. Why couldn't we put out a RFP and get some ideas from some of the contractors that would say some of the stuff that, you can't do this without putting a beam through here, and that doesn't cost us anything to do that.
I'm sorry. We can reach out to Jimmy Walden again and have him kind of advise some of the details. I mean, there's some things they did to that building, like they cut the concrete
Sure.
off flush with the wall. We probably wouldn't want to do that. Just put an A roof on it.
I think we could do some stuff that doesn't cost to get a better handle on what we need to do with the roof that would also allow us to do whatever we decide to do inside. I mean, I think everything I see here leaves one big open space. I think that's a common factor here. So I think we got a better handle on what space is going to be needed inside. Because if all the plans have one large space and then some smaller ones, that's
Well-
going to help the roof design.
Well, let me give you just one thought off the top of my head.
Okay.
And not playing devil's advocate here, because I do
Sure.
agree, we need to stabilize the building. Do we demolish the existing layered roof and just remove it and then put an A roof back in its place?
The concrete roofs that I've been involved with where you replace them is you put an A-frame over top. Now, these have not been that size of buildings. They've been much smaller,
Right.
much
But-
smaller facilities. But yes, the first thing we done, it was tie back. So tie back, you wrap the house with, they wrapped the concrete with, and then they built an A-frame roof.
It's not the concrete I'm concerned about, it's the layered roof that's there,
layered
the
roof.
actual flat roof. You may want to go in and look at what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah.
I would imagine we'd probably want to demo and remove all that. There's no asbestos, it's all fiberglass layered composite
That's fine,
type
okay.
stuff.
I thought it was
but
a flat
it's-
concrete roof with girders on it.
It's
Okay.
layered roof. I mean, you go in there, oh my God, there's asbestos, and no, it's not asbestos, it's just an old fiberglass
Well,
layered roof. It's what they made in the
If
seventies.
we come to the conclusion that we want to put a roof on, and we put out a request for bid proposal, people are going, and a scope, people are going to come to us with ideas about putting it on. And that hasn't cost Middlesex anything at that point.
Fair
And
play.
we're still
Yep.
moving the project forward.
So not necessarily a bid so much as an RFP. Give us your proposal. Do you think we should remove the roof? Should we put a
We
roof
ran
on
out
it?
of scope, we're on
Yeah.
about what we want, and then we're getting ideas on how to do it. And decide your idea is best, then we'll start talking money.
Okay. Well, if that's the will of the board, Anne Marie and I, and maybe Wayne, because I think you're on that committee, right?
Yeah.
We can sit down with David Self and maybe even Jimmy Walden and get some ideas on what type of information to put in an RFP.
And also, Daniel worked on that when he worked for Jimmy at that time. Yeah.
Yes.
He worked on that other building.
There you go.
I think there's some paperwork too, I think, on that old building.
So we're in agreement to continue to discuss what needs to be done with the building and table the action of hiring this gentleman, at least at this point. Now, that may have to happen later, but at this point, we're going to experiment on discussions with local contractors, air, building and grounds people, and then see where we are and funnel around back to a decision on what we want to do then. Is everybody in agreement with that?
I'm kind of like we have formed an advisory group here to look at the roof. And then they're going to come back and we're going to see that. I don't want to think I want to enter anything else into it other than the roof. Am I overlooking something?
Well, and again, this isn't my issue. I'm not as well versed on it, but would the board want to consider bringing the architect on board to get some guidance on how to write the RFP? Potentially.
I think that's premature now.
Yeah.
I think that might happen later, but at this point, I think let's,
Yeah,
and the committee did a great job. Don't discount that at all. But I think we gather some more information, get a ballpark figure, and I know that's hard to hold anybody to that, but I think there's some contractors out here that particularly local that would say this is probably what it's going to cost and
Yeah, that's
be
right.
pretty close on that, I think.
I want to spend our money on nails. You know?
Can you?
Okay.
Can they add that to our to-do list?
Am I done or am I being directed to do something out of all this?
We're gonna wait till you get back here from Virginia Beach and then we'll help direct you. How about that?
Bill said something about you getting up with some nails and fixing that roof. Yeah, I don't
Right,
know why
that's
you
what
didn't
I
hear that.
heard.
Okay. You okay, Anne Marie?
I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but yes.
Okay.
Anne Marie,
Thank
before
you
you
for
go,
everything, Anna Marie.
I'd like to thank you for what you've done. Because, most projects that we start on, we shouldn't put a Band-Aid on it. How I feel, we put a Band-Aid on it. Everybody's happy based on a cost. Our last Band-Aid we decided to do cost us $5 million. We all agreed to put that Band-Aid on it. Now we're talking about something for the community itself. Everybody's happy. Say, put a roof on it. Be the same thing you done 10 years ago. You put a roof on, don't do nothing else. Personally, I feel that if you do the project, it should be complete. So when y'all all agree with the roof, I'm gonna still look at it and see the same thing. I'm not gonna start, a house that I can't finish. To me, like Brother Jesse said, well, I don't want to tear it down, but something, if you're gonna treat me in a way, if you can put plywood over my windows, then you just would tear the house down. So we just will be honest with ourselves. It's a cost here. It's gonna cost. We played around, had a good meeting, and at our meeting we had at least 20 people that came and wanted to do something with that building. And the thing about it, I was talking to somebody the other day about the building itself. They don't have nothing in neither county around us. Biggest thing we got is Bethpage, or if you go down to Deltaville, I didn't know some place was down there until after I got elected on the board. And it's nothing like what that could be. And like I said, yes, I believe if you're gonna do it, you're gonna look at roughly $3 million. I mean, that's what you're going, in the area, that's what it's gonna cost. Now we're frowning on the money. And I told some of us earlier, a whole lot of things I didn't agree with. Paying for the sheriff's office wasn't no problem. Do your math. Do your math and do your common sense, okay? And somebody was telling the other day, I said, do common sense. I've said before that things are happening. We're gonna have to spend money, you know, but it's good to say that we want something finished instead of giving money when, oh, heck, we gave close to $100,000 away, Bill, just because I think we want to do something. And that was on the schools, we gave them $75,000. Just because I think we want to do something with the renovation. And yes, I'm going to use it. Then if you ask anybody within the last year since I've been talking about it, just about anybody, how come you want Bill New? And I'm just using this for example now. And you know what they told? They told me that we just built an athletic complex. We can't leave there. We got to stay there. That's your answer. Now you look at everything else, we don't have them in front of us. They try to justify something that basically is wrong. Now we talking about a community center that is big enough that if we want to invite anybody to, free shade is nice. But you invite the governor down, the senators, we walking around. You make it a show place. And your figure's gonna cost you some money, but don't rub me on my back and say, look, we're gonna fix the roof and y'all gonna be satisfied. You know, I'm not in the big thing but fixing the roof, okay? Not if you're not gonna complete the project. If you can say we got a project, let's be complete. Stop putting Band-Aids on something when we should finish. If we're not gonna finish, just say we're not gonna do it, we're gonna tear it down. I'm not gonna vote for it, okay? And we have to make the best of what we got. But that's how I feel. That's why I say, Anne Marie, I was in the committee meeting. I was in it when we had our billing contractor, our billing guy. He went down there and he got his own ideas. Other contracts, some of them said, I would tear it on down and, you know, start from the ground again and go up. It might would be cheaper. Some said that. You know, it's the idea of what you want it. If you don't want it there as a county, tear it down. Okay, we already boarded up one building around here. We ought to try to keep windows in. And I think it should be a spot in the middle of the county. And I think if we make our mind up, we're gonna do it. We gotta do something, because if we don't do nothing, we have did that in the past. That's how come the roof is falling in. It was made by the decision, you got the money, you didn't do anything. So don't kid ourselves, we didn't do nothing for years because we didn't wanna do it and didn't want the money. We just didn't do it. But all of us know we got some type of reason. I'm not saying Anne Marie worked herself off getting the design and I don't know because I want to see a picture of the building. You know, I'm a simple guy. I want to look at the building. They can look at the engineering and cheaper. I want to see it. I want to see the building. If somebody could draw that building, what it would look like if we complete the project, or if we do a project, then people can see the finished product instead of just looking at the roof. They will see what we're trying to do. Then they can understand a little bit better, because it's not everybody that can look at things. We can talk about renovation, they can't see it. Well, it's a lot of people like that, but once we draw it and put it on a poster, what we want is finishing gonna cost $3 million. I mean, maybe 5. I don't even got no idea what it will cost, but I know it's a gut building. I know it's got beams on the inside. I know that it's not gonna cost you that much to put heat and cooling in it based on design. Okay, the remodel part is gonna cost what we've got the floors. So I'm just looking at everybody's telling me that what it's gonna cost and how cost is going up on everything. And I think that they're rolling over with boxcars. You heard the guy today, they won't charge us money for nothing. That's how come I didn't comment, because, you know, I didn't feel a need. But for us, Anne Marie, what you have done so far, I like it. I don't know what they're gonna do with all these different types, but I'm still looking for a picture. I would hate to spend $48,000 and don't see a picture. That's the only thing. If this guy could show me a picture on how it's gonna look after he finished with what he gonna do on design, because if any of us was in the committee meeting that we were at and see everybody was so happy at the right at the site, they came up here fruitful, all ages. I mean, younger people that we don't have, all us. They still younger one up there. And I mean, you know, all of them was younger. They had ideas on what they want, what could happen. They see it, but we got to show it to them. And we got to stop holding our younger people up. But that's all. For as I can, you know, we got to fix the roof, okay? Yeah. I'm not fighting it, but you put a design on roof on so you know how the side's gonna look when you finish. Don't just put the roof on. and you don't have a picture of the finished product. That's what I'm saying.
Well, when I brought up the roof, I was asked around to make sure that I understood that this group is committed to doing something. That's the first thing that I asked, because if we're not committed, then just what you just said. I feel that the group is committed and that putting the roof on is just part of that commitment to moving the project forward. That's how, I hear what you're saying. If you're not gonna do it, don't piecemeal and do it wrong. But if you're committed, we need to be able to.
And when that roof
Take care
after
of
you get on it, you should be able to see the picture of the finished product. So we make our mind up. Not asking much, you put a roof on, you got a finished product, at least you got a picture of it. If it take 3 or 4 years to do it, you got a picture of it. But don't just put that roof like you put on the other roof down the road down here. You know, I'm a person that I really like the wow factor. You know, I'm sorry. I like, you know, something that in this day and time, if you ride around, you see what they're building. They're building something that you walk, you ride by and you look back and you like the way it looks. So I'm just saying, if we're gonna do the roof, make sure we got a design for the outside to come finish, how it's gonna look. Not so much of somebody architect got to be doing something that he can draw up and we can tell him how we want it when it's finished, even if we don't get no price on it. Then we get about a 4x8 and put it out there by the road so the rest of the county can wonder when we finish it. Don, even no money.
Okay, so we have a direction there, and a little bit more to be defined, Anne Marie, when you come back, right? All right. Moving right along, Anne Marie, you're still on the hot seat on, citizens appointments, please.
Okay, so the other one, I'm still not sure where I'm going, but I'm guessing that somebody will tell me later this week what you really want from me.
Reggie told you, but his mic wasn't on. Now we can make up some really good stuff.
Design. A 130-foot building, and you won't put a designer roof on it, and then we'll get together when you come back and show how the outside gonna look if we ever finish it.
You,
Okay, we'll talk.
okay,
Okay, moving right along, Anne Marie, please, on citizens appointments.
okay. Well, let's start on page 115, it looks like. On page 115, you can see that they are asking for us to reappoint Kevin Gentry on the Rappahannock Community College Board. Oh, can you hear me?
Page 115. Okay, so,
Am I on the right
Wait.
page?
Yes, ma'am, you are. Yeah, you're
Okay.
good.
Let me
so
write.
do we need to do these individually? Is that the best way to
Yeah,
do it?
because I think we have
Mhm.
some competition on one of these. For the
Okay,
Jamaica
then,
district, I've got some competition.
okay, well then, with that, let's go ahead and a motion would be in order for reappointing Kevin Gentry to the Middlesex County on the Rappahannock Community College Board, correct? And he's in agreement to that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, a motion would be in order to approve Kevin for that.
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Motion
second it.
made, motion made by Wayne Jesse and seconded by Bill Harris. Any further communication, discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Mr. Crittenden,
Yes.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris.
Yes. Motion is approved. Next, please.
On the Board of Zoning Appeals, I just have one applicant for the repeat, for the Harmony Village position, which is Theodore Kenyer. There's just one.
So moved.
Motion made for Kenya, or Ted Kenya, I guess. Need a second?
Second.
Second by, Mr. Crittenden. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Bill Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Crittenden,
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris.
Yes, motion's approved. Next,
For the vacancy from the Jamaica District on the Planning Commission, we have Mary Landgraf and James Evans, both who have submitted applications.
Yes,
So I think-
oh, go ahead. No, I said I talked to Landgraf, Mary Lynn Landgraf, and, she was very interested in, being on the EDA board there. And plus with her experience on EDA in Baltimore too, but, she's been there for 6 years and has a, bread and breakfast up in Churchview. And I think she'd be a very good addition, even though we had some other ones that, were just as good, but I think she was a better fit.
I don't know either one of them, so I'm gonna take your opinion, Mr.
All right,
Jesse.
so I'll
on-
make that motion for Mary
Second,
Lynn Landgraf.
motion made by Mr. Jesse
Second.
and second by Mr. Williams for Mary Lynn Landgraf. Any further discussion?
Yeah,
We're going on the planning commission? Is what she's checked?
Right, that was the
check
planning
planning commission, but then it
She's checked
says,
Planning,
No, it's planning.
yeah, the planning commission, which, planning commission is what she, yes,
Planning.
right, okay, yes. that's
Right. Representing the Jamaica District. Any other confusion?
I think we're good.
Mhm.
Any other discussion?
Okay, well, it looks like, oh, did you vote? I wasn't paying attention. Did you vote on that one?
Which one?
Did you vote on Mary Lynn?
No, we have the motion, we have the second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Crittenden,
yes,
Mr. Jesse.
Yes,
Mr. Don Harris.
Yes, motion is approved. Anne Marie, continue.
Okay, and we had a vacancy from Bill Hawthorne, who resigned on January 18th. And it looks like we had 3 applicants for the Economic Development Authority. That would be, and you'll find them on page 1, starting on page 122. You've got Wayne Savage, you have Anton Weber, and Doug McMinn.
I'm not seeing 3.
Uh,
I'm seeing 2, because I see where Mr. Savage has put in for here saying that he would like to serve on, he'd be willing to serve on multiple boards or committees to help the county out. And he's checked 3 of them, and that the EDA is not one of them that he checked. So I don't know
Okay.
how,
I don't know why that says that then.
But it says it over
Let's-
here on.
well, that's our writing. We're talking about what Mr. Savage submitted here is what we got to go by. He was saying he'd like to be on the Board of Building Code Appeals, Board of Zoning Appeals, and the Planning Commission.
I confirmed that he did want to be on EDA, even though he didn't check it.
I'm with you. I'm with you. But we're talking about someone that's got a highly qualified individual here to submit the paperwork, and this is what we have to go by. I mean, I think he'd be a great choice to be on the board. Don't get me wrong, but we have other people here that are putting in to be on it as well. And I kind of feel we gotta go by what paperwork we got here.
well, did he say, I mean, if you saw him, he come in, did he say that way he wanted to be on?
It was sent to me in the email
Uh-huh.
that Trent and John had him put in the application.
Uh-huh. So that could have been a check.
So we
It could
really
have been a
don't-
mistake.
so we
No,
don't
I
have an
think he
application?
might have just,
Yeah, it could have been a
missed
mistake
it.
somewhere.
I think he just didn't check
Right,
it
because
correctly.
they're right close together and you could sometime go, bam, he
Yeah.
didn't do it.
Well,
Oh,
if
we
you
got the
look,
man right here.
if you look at the guy from
Mr.
the
Funkhauser,
BZA, he
would
did
you
the
come
same thing.
forward and I'm working on it.
From the BZA,
I'm
he
trying to
did the
keep
same
everybody
thing,
in
and I had
control
marked
here.
it
It's a
up.
full-time job. Go ahead.
He marked it.
A delicate situation, because I understand Mr. that's fine, wait up. What Mr. Harris is saying about completing the application. All I know is Anton applied first. Shanae and I coordinated on that. I spoke with Mr. Weber. Wayne Savage applied. It was her understanding as well as Mr. Anzavino's that he had applied for the EDA. I did not catch that the boxes weren't checked properly. All I know is I had an applicant before me. And then the latest one was Doug McMinn. And he submitted an application. Shanae asked due to the tight time frame whether it should be put on the agenda. And I said, by all means, because I had talked to at least one board member about that applicant. All three of them are well aware of the conflict of interest forms. All three of them are willing to serve on the EDA. I don't know about their other expressions of interest because I didn't talk to them about that. And so that's all I can add.
And
But I'll try
we're,
and answer any questions you might have.
I'll have a quick one just to help educate. We have 3 applicants for 1 position currently,
Well, that is correct.
correct? And I think that if it's not inappropriate for me to talk about, but I think we also have a potential person that is going to go off in January. Is that correct?
And that's pretty much public knowledge because she stated as such at several meetings. Selene Roden has been happy to serve, very pleased, but anxious to enter the next phase of her life.
Okay.
And so she has indicated that she is not going to be requesting reappointment. I know I've had that conversation with some of the members, but not all of y'all. So there is a term, her terms expire, Bill's Cawthorn's term is going to expire in 26. Selene's terms expiring in 25. I'd have to check my list to see when the other terms come up. But those members are likely to seek reappointment. So we're anticipating one currently, not anticipating, we have one currently, and anticipating one in January.
Thank you, sir. So we have 3 applicants for 1 position today. And you have the 3 applicants in your booklet. Any further discussion or
Well,
questions, particularly if you don't know all the applicants?
We currently have 2 people in the Deltaville area on that board, correct?
Could we bring up the EDA page? Because it's got the numbers on it.
Yeah, at least 2 in Deltaville.
I
Right.
could bring up another file.
And if we put another one on, it's gonna be 3.
Right, it needs to spread it out.
I think we need to spread it out a little bit.
You guys spread it.
I tell you where I stand. I think we're very fortunate to have 3 individuals to put in for it. I think they're all highly qualified and we do a good job. But the paperwork presented to this board does not say that Mr. Savage is interested in the Economic Development Authority. I think he is by what y'all all said. The other gentleman, it would put a 3rd person in Deltaville. Mr. McMahon is in Wake, and he is highly qualified as well. So for my, for right now, I would recommend Mr. McMahon be the one that we chose for now. I say if Mr. Savage is interested in it, please put in his paperwork saying that he is. And like I said, I'm very happy. I think all these are very highly qualified people. And the only reason I'm saying anything about the area is I think that we might be weighting it too much, having 3 people from one area.
And I just brought that up for your reference. Of course, some of these people that are here, regardless of their address, they have different business interests elsewhere and connections. So, you know, one could argue we're heavy on Urbana. But technically James Reed lives
Mr.
just
Hyman's not in
outside of the
Urbana
town
anymore.
limits.
He's in Deltaville.
What's that?
Mr. Hyman's not in Urbana, he's in Deltaville.
Correct. That's his,
So that would help
that's his
with the
business
Urbana
mailing
thing,
address.
but
That's what I was going to
Deltaville.
draw attention to. So I'm saying if somebody looked at that, they'd say we're heavy on Urbana, but technically, Mr. Reed lives just outside the town limits. And then, I believe that's correct. And then, of course, Mr. Anzamino lives in town, and that's Mr. Hyman's business address that he uses.
What we need a motion for which one we want? Already made, somebody already made one.
There's no motion been made. We're still open for that. Or any other discussion you might want to have prior to making the motion.
Well, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Mr. Doug McMahon to the Economic Development Authority.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Harris, Bill Harris, second by Mr. Williams. Any further discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Mr. Bill Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Crittenden,
Yes.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris.
All right, well, let's don't break the pattern. Let's all be on the same page. I vote yes as well. Motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, did we, do Mr. Evans, did we discuss him?
He was,
He was, yes,
Okay, so there was only one position.
Two, no, it was only one position, but
two people, correct. Okay. Ms. Ricardi, what else you have?
That was it. On to the next.
Okay. Let's move on to item number 6, administrative updates.
And Mr. Chairman, we have probably an hour and a half of closed session. So
Okay.
I'm standing between you and dinner and that. So I'm going to
Okay.
be very brief.
Please.
Couple of, yeah, figured as much. Couple of important items. One, and perhaps the most timely, is setting the annual board retreat. There are a number of issues I think the board would be well advised to get in a room and discuss. And it is very timely. I would recommend the board consider their retreat for FY 23-24 now to be held next Friday, potentially down in the Deltaville boardroom at the Maritime Museum where we've historically had it. And I'll let that one resonate with you. And I'm going to move on as you think about when you'd want to have it. I would recommend sometime in May. Please God, not this Friday, because I've got to go to Rochester and get my son from college. Next is a very simple matter. It's an ordinance amendment on our no wake ordinance in Broad Creek. The lovely couple that have been maintaining the no wake signs wants to travel the country and see the world. And they've discussed passing the responsibility on of the maintenance to Don Pringle with Regatta Point Marina. That is fine. I would highly recommend that as well, but it is an ordinance, so you do have to send us to public hearing and strike Cindy and Doug Atkins. Maybe recognize them for their wonderful stewardship of that program, and then approve an ordinance amendment naming Don Pringle as a responsible party for the maintenance. And I would ask that you send that to public hearing in June, please.
Do we need a motion for that? To send the no wake ordinance,
That's the only change. Changing the responsible party, and a copy of the ordinance is in your packet.
correct. But our motion's gonna be to move that to our June meeting for
For
approval,
public hearing.
for public hearing.
Yep.
Okay. Motion would be in order for that.
So move.
So moved by Mr. Crittenden,
Second.
second by Bill Harris. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Crittenden,
Yes.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Bill Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Don Harris.
Yes. Motion approved to move the to public hearing.
And
On
Shanae
the
will need to
ordinance.
advertise that 2 weeks prior. Just put that on our to-do list. Dave can give us some pointers on how to advertise ordinance amendments. He's the master at it. Mr. Chairman, back to the retreat. We had originally kind of set aside November 19th, that mid-Friday in November, but because of the election and because of appointment of Mr. Harris, it was determined, wait till everybody gets their feet under them, get the election over, and know who's going to actually be on the board. I think it's very timely. So I would recommend you do it in May. And that sets up a nice time frame for the next board meeting on June 4th and other key boards that we'll have to interrelate with.
Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays this time of year coming up are not good for me.
And I'm not married to Friday. At this point in time, I'd come in on a Saturday and do it.
Tuesday, no, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Or yes or no? So Tuesdays and Thursdays are good. Okay,
Okay.
but Tuesdays and Thursdays would work. So let's look at Tuesdays and Thursdays then.
Okay, before we do that though, I'm assuming we would look at a meeting like 10 o'clock in the morning, but
9 a.m. Yeah. And then we go
nine,
pretty much until we're done.
9:30 to, somewhere in that time frame. Does that still exclude Fridays for you? It does? Exclude you as well? Okay, okay.
Sorry. No, I was just agreeing with Mr. Harris's schedule.
Thursday, May 16th. Thursday, May 16th,
Just as a disclaimer,
9 a.m.
yeah, 9.
We usually wrap up around 3.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have a lunch and then we usually wrap up around 3. Of course, we got a lot to discuss. Now, we never take action at those retreats. It's just an opportunity for the board to get in and discuss the strategic issues facing the county. Whatever y'all kind of discuss, you come back in the June meeting and actually discuss and put a vote on and cap it. Around 3.
3.
Around 3.
So what about the 16th?
6
I
p.m.
can promise you we'll be done
Well,
before 6
Randy's gonna
o'clock.
be out that night too by middle afternoon.
Yeah.
If we're not out by 3:30, Heather will start group facilitation of the meeting and she'll have us out of there before 4.
I have a squirt bottle.
Yeah. We're good. The EDA is part of this. We'll probably invite Trent to come in and talk about county properties that we may want to put out on the market and work with the EDA on. That's one of the issues. It's kind of still a holdover from last year, but we can schedule that later in the day.
Well, and if we're talking about Thursday, you got the 16th, or you got the 23rd, or you got the 30th.
That's right.
So does any of those three fit anybody better or worse than others?
23rd, that's me done.
23rd's good.
23rd's good for you, Wayne? You kind of flexible? Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, so so we're talking about it in Deltaville at the Maritime Museum, is
Yep.
that correct?
I'll call them tomorrow morning and set that aside for us.
Okay, so right now, let's tentatively,
You gotta
No,
set it.
we're
'Cause
set.
We gotta let the media know.
And there's a lot that we've got to get lined up for this. There's.
Yes, that
Okay,
can't be tentative.
okay,
Sorry.
fine. So we're gonna go with the 23rd, and we're gonna do that at what time?
I would recommend 9:30, 9 a.m. in that time frame.
Which suits everybody? 9 o'clock?
6 a.m.
Yes.
Okay.
About at 6.
I'm up by then, so that's fine with me.
Okay. 9 o'clock AM on the 23rd for the board retreat.
At the Deltaville Maritime Museum Board room. And we'll send out a calendar invite to
Yeah.
everybody. And thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have about 5 other things, but in lieu of the time, there's nothing pressing that can't wait. So I'll just hold that report until June.
Okay, county attorney update,
Nothing beyond my staff report at this time.
nothing, staff reports in your packet. Everybody's staff report is in your packet. Okay, let's see where we are here.
And Mr. Chairman, if you would allow me, one thing I did promise one board member I'd bring up. Between now and June, it's my intention to try to get some quotes on potentially timbering some of the county properties. We got some pretty good timber out there. As many of y'all noticed in your ride arounds, hope to have maybe some quotes on how much we could potentially get for timbering some of the school and or county properties.
Okay,
Thank you for bringing that up, Matt. I just like to say that timber can go too long to where we start losing value, where it starts losing value. And we're trusted with managing the county's money, and that timber that the county owns is their money as well. And thank you for looking into that, Matt.
and that also includes the property that we gave to the school system, and we may want to get that back, correct?
Yes, sir. I'm going to include the school property at Cook's Corner because we got some good timber on that. We'll have to coordinate that with the school board, but yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. All right, moving right along, folks. Is there any unfinished or new business that we need to chat about?
I don't think we need to have a whole lot of conversation, but Matt, I appreciate you having staff bring this up. These are plans for all the sewer that we're currently looking at doing. There's Deltaville here, Hartfield, Coppin, Saluda. Take them when you take them home. They're yours. Look at them, and I think it will help us a little bit when we have to talk to people in your district and ask questions about it. You have looked at this map, you can bring the map out and look at it with them and so forth and so on. I really think it will help. And appreciate again, I appreciate.
All right, thank you. Wonderful. All right, no other unfinished business or new business. Matters presented by the board. Hearing none. I guess I need to do the public comment, right? That's on the agenda. Okay, I'm going to open the floor for public comment. Would anyone like to speak? Debbie, would you like to speak again? Okay, hearing none, seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment section. And it would be in order to have a motion for going into closed session.
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Well, hang on.
Second.
So moved by Bill Harris.
No, sorry.
What?
We got back up. We got to
Oh.
read the motion. So the board needs a motion to convene in closed session pursuant to, and I'm going to make a very long motion referencing two closed sessions. The first is referencing 2.2-3711A3 and A8. This is for the discussion and consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect our bargaining position and negotiating strategy, and to consult with legal counsel regarding specific legal questions about the acquisition of said property. In addition, we will be discussing it pursuant to 2.2-3711A8 and A29. This is for the purpose of discussion of the award of a public contract regarding Humboldt Field Airport, which involves the expenditure of public funds, including potentially, the expenditure of public funds and the discussion of the terms or scope of a proposed contract, where discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the body, and for consultation with legal counsel, retained and employed, regarding specific legal questions about the contract negotiations, the procedures and processes thereof. There you go.
So moved.
Thank you.
Bill Harris, on the motion, to go into closed session, and a second is
Randy.
Second.
by Randy Crittenden. Any further discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Mr. Jesse,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Crittenden,
Aye.
Mr. Don Harris.
Aye. Motion carried. We will be moving into closed session. I assume we're going downstairs?
That was my question.
Well, I was gonna say we could. I don't think Emery's gonna participate. Do y'all want dinner?